Day, here from Tswalu Kalahari in South Africa. My favorite bird has to be the social weaver. The enormous nest that they create, their survival tactics to inhabit these harsh and unforgiving environments, and as well as their complex social arrangements, is truly remarkable. And the interconnectedness with the ecosystem shows us that we are too.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth. This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Peaceful way to start our afternoon safari with blue skies, puffy white clouds, green grass, and the beautiful impalas as they slowly feed their way through the lush summer vegetation. Makes for the perfect way to get things underway. Hopefully it's going to be a good afternoon. I'm going to be trying to settle the score with the leopards that, well, have given us a bit of a hiding the last 2 days. We haven't been able to get them on camera, even though we've kind of worked out where they are, particularly Tanya and Cub. So we're going to try head back there and get them. And I think Steve is going to be around the western sides of the reserve, and I have a funny feeling that he's going to pick up on one of those spotty cats from the west, maybe even the Duke, or potentially Hukumuri, which will be so wonderful. It promises to have lots and lots for everybody, so we hope that you will get comfortable, find a way to spend some time with us on this, your very own live African safari. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Sunset Safari on the 29th of January. I can't believe it's already 29 days into 2021. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, as you can see, we've got a few impala milling about on quarantine. They're doing their normal thing. They like this area. During the day, there's lots of shade for them that they can kind of move between, and also a lot of food that's around at the moment. They don't really actually have to wander too far in order to eat everything that is here. My name is Tristan. On camera, I've got Impo this afternoon, and we hope that you guys are ready to go. Remember that we are coming to you live from various parts of South Africa, which means we would love to hear from you. So you can use the hashtag WildEarth on Twitter, at FC on the YouTube chat stream, in the comment sections on the various other feeds, and on the website via the live feed there. All of those places we'll try and get your questions from and answer as many as we can. Now, talking about us coming from various live locations, we will have Phinda, Tswalu and Ngala out with us this afternoon. It sounds like Ngala and Phinda are on a lion's search, and Tswalu, well, I think they're still enjoying all the water that's around, and so I'm sure we'll get lots of interesting things from their side. It's been so fascinating seeing the effects of the cyclone and how it's kind of moved across South Africa, and how each area has had some unique aspects to the amount of rain that we've had, and how it's changing the landscape in all of the parts that we are able to see and show you guys, which is very, very, very cool. Now, talking about this cyclone and all the things that it has brought, today is a beautiful day, so let's find out how the weather is in the other parts of our program. Well, it seems like it's going to be a beautiful day pretty much across the board. Some slight chance of rain, but I don't think we'll get much up this part of the world. I think it's going to be fairly kind of sunny for most of it, and if the rain does come, it's going to be later. It is a lot hotter than it was this morning, which means that to start this afternoon, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot of animals kind of in shade. We'll probably find it'll be good for ellies to start with, and then as it starts to cool down, that's when I'm going to hedge my bet to be able to find these cats. I'm going to slowly bumble that way. I'm not going to be racing there like we did this morning. This morning I was trying to catch them in the early hours while it was still cool, which was close. I mean, we had a visual of a leopard on foot. We just couldn't get it on camera. It just disappeared in the long grass. So we'll go back, and hopefully this afternoon, given when it gets cool, that they're going to come up onto the rocks at First Rock and maybe have a drink there. That's the kind of plan. What I am going to do from here is going to do a slight little turn past the hyena den. I doubt it will be active at this time of the day, but I'll give it a bash, because I did say that I would go there the last couple of drives, and I've just been a bit sidetracked with tracks and things like that. So I'll just go past there on my way, see what happens. In the meantime, though, I'll send you down to Phinda so that they can say good afternoon.
What an awesome start to our afternoon here at andBeyond Phinda. We are about 2 minutes away from Mountain Lodge, and we have found a beautiful female leopard up in a tree. She's just moved a little bit from when we initially found her. We found her about just before the show started, and she's moved up right into the canopy of this beautiful marula tree. It's actually a marula tree that I've driven past quite a lot in the past and thought, wow, it would be a great place to see a leopard. And my name is Angus, and I'm going to be with you for the next 2 drives or so. This female leopard, we initially saw her. There were some impala a little bit further off to my left that she seems to be looking at quite intently. She's been looking at them for the last 20 minutes or so. And we spotted her because the impala seemed to be looking at something A lot of them were looking in one direction. And then just as we had driven past the tree, we managed to spot her. She does seem to have lost a little bit of interest though. Earlier on she was looking quite intently in their direction, and now she seems to have moved up a bit more into a more shady, sheltered section, perhaps to get out of their view and wait for them or perhaps another herd of impala to move past. But for now it looks like she might just be resting there. I can't actually see her face at the moment, so she might just be resting there for the next few minutes. Leopards do usually only get active a little bit later on in the day, but they are very opportunistic. So with that being said, if there is a good chance for her to get hunting, she will definitely try and take it. And you can imagine that from up there, it's very difficult for us to see her. David, yes, finally. I've been away from the bush for a while now, and it's very, very, very good to find a spotted cat. And I hope Tristan also gets lucky enough to see one a little bit later on this afternoon. But like I was saying, she might just be resting there for a little bit longer. I mentioned she's got an opportunistic predator, so you can imagine if a herd of impala were moving through here, you can see the grass here is very lush, very green, so there's a lot of grazing for the animals at the moment. So impala could move through this area, but because I mentioned there's a lot of grazing, they'll move around possibly a little bit less than they would during the winter. So maybe a bit less of a chance of them actually moving around and moving right underneath this marula tree. I have seen videos I haven't seen it myself, but I've seen leopards jumping from that height that she's up now. She's probably around 5 or 6 meters up, actually dropping right onto an impala before, but I think that was up in Zambia. And if you look at those branches she's sitting on, usually you'll find leopards. Yes, a very beautiful tree, Grant. Marulas, well, they often they kind of quintessential with a leopard draped. Oh, there she's yawning, which is also a very good sign that she is looking to get a bit active. She has moved around in this tree, so I think if we stick with her, we'll hopefully be able to get her to, or just be able to get a chance to see her a little bit better if she perhaps moves to a more comfortable spot, because I mentioned those branches are quite skinny, especially as you get higher up into the canopy. And often with impala, I've seen them before. I mentioned that they were looking in her direction, and I did hear one alarm call, which is just a kind of a warning call to other animals that would be preyed upon by leopard in the area that something has been spotted. I did hear just one call though, which is often perhaps just a warning in terms of they're not really sure what they've seen, but they could have seen something. And often when they're sure that they've seen a dangerous predator, then they'll alarm call quite frequently and more than once. So there is a possibility that they'll just relax, and she might just take her time and also just wait for them to get a little bit more relaxed, and then she'll hopefully climb down and try and stalk them. But anything is possible. I can't actually see those impala at the moment. Let me try have a look. Adrian, no, I haven't seen an elephant ever hit a tree with a leopard in it. If I did, I would be very excited though. That would be incredible. I have seen elephants, especially in these marula trees, but not at this time of year. A little bit later on in the season where there are marulas in the marula tree, then an elephant might try and hit a marula tree to get the fruit down. But no, I've never seen an elephant scare a leopard out of a tree. It's possible that it could have happened though, especially in an open area like this where a leopard would just perhaps try and ride its luck and hope that the elephant would move off. But if that were to happen, I think the leopard would kind of make way for the elephant before it got to the tree. And I mentioned earlier that I couldn't see those impala. I did have a look. I can't see them anymore, but there is a little bit of a ridge to my left. So if they move down, she may actually get up a little bit later. I don't want to promise anything though. you can see on a hot day like this, it's lovely to be able to climb up into the top of a tree and just let the breeze help cool you down. And it's actually very difficult to see her. I think the camera is a little bit higher than I am, but you can see that she's very, very difficult to find. We're lucky to have spotted her here. So we're probably going to sit with her for a little bit longer, and hopefully she'll move into an area or place in the tree, or perhaps move down and get a little bit more active. But we're going to send you off to another live location.
Well, that's a cracking start to this afternoon's proceedings. Just getting to the hyena den now, so we'll see what happens. See whether or not anybody's home. Like I say, it's a little early, if I'm honest. It's not great. If I don't come right today, I promise all of you, as our hyena viewers, maybe a lot of you won't be seeing this, but some of you will, that will try come. Ah, they are out. Wonderful. That's good news. Let's just park in the shade. Hello, nonsenses. I don't see any sign of an adult yet. I'll have to get him in the shade now. Definitely going to have trouble this afternoon. They look like they have the board face on already, which means we're going to get punished with marauding little hyenas that are going to come and investigate what goes on. There we go. You see, one by one, they're arriving already. They can't help themselves, these guys. Once they see a car, they have to come and say hello. I can't believe how big they're getting. It seems like they're all going to disappear under the vehicle, which is par for the course. What are you doing? You can't come from underneath the car. I've got one that's busy underneath the car here, but I always try and make sure that they're welcome to be around the car, but as soon as they touch the car, then it's time to say to them enough. They need to move slightly, but when they move around the car, then I've got no problem with that. It's just when they start to touch it, that's a bad habit that we don't want them to get into. Looks like they're not actually that interested in us today, which is good news. I'm hoping to try and move forward a little bit, just because, like I say, I want to try and put Mpho in the shade so that he doesn't get punished by the sun as well, which we should be able to do fairly easily just now. All right, well, we'll sit here and we'll enjoy some time at the hyena den. I know it's been a long overdue and a lot of you have wanted to see them. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a cloudy but yet blue sky here in Djuma Private Game Reserve, where it is relatively warm, but still a lovely afternoon. Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Followedge, joined by Theo on camera, and as always, we are super excited to have you on board and super excited to take you on a journey with us this afternoon. Now, our plans are to bumble around and see if we can find any birds, but they're all being rather quiet right now, so often that means checking watering holes. But so far, the only bird I've heard calling is the rattling cisticula. Otherwise, they're all still a bit warm. Still a bit warm, but we'll get some, I'm sure, as the day goes on. I was chatting with Tristan before we went out, and he is, and I haven't seen him as determined as I saw him just now. He is determined to track down one of those cats. He's going to do it. You all know he is. I know he is. But a wonderful afternoon after a relatively cool morning. Aha. I knew we'd find an animal at the bottom of the hill. Knew we'd find an animal, and the animal that we want to show you is the perfect bite-sized morsel for Phinda and beyond Phindas. Big leopard in a tree.
Welcome back, everyone. This leopard has barely moved at all. We've repositioned ourselves so that we can see a little bit more of her. So we've just moved over a little bit more to her left. You saw her glance over at us now. And she's yawning. I mentioned earlier that yawning is a good sign. What they're trying to do is actually oxygenate their body when they yawn. It's basically just like a big breath. And you can see her crouch forward and really intently staring at something. And I think from up there, I mentioned she's 5 or 6 meters up, she might be able to see something from up there. So she's just showing good signs of possibly looking to move soon. You can see her throat is moving up and down, so she's breathing quite heavily as well, which is possibly for the same reason why she's yawning, just trying to get oxygen into her body. You can see how her spots actually really help her to stay camouflaged up there as well. You can imagine in that dappled light, especially when a little bit later on in the evening, when they usually are a little bit more active, that all the shadows and the light, the contrast between the shadows and the light will really blend in well with her spots. And I think for her now, it's probably just a game of patience. We know this particular female, she's up now. Wow. And there's another stretch. Wow, I'm so happy that she has moved a little bit. And you can really get to see her now. You can see that beautiful collar of black spots on her throat. Daniela, she doesn't have any cubs at the moment, but she has had a few sets of cubs here on Phinda before. There's one particular leopard that we know is her daughter, and we see that her around quite often as well. I did have a look at her belly earlier, and she is quite interested in hunting, but her belly didn't look very, very empty. It's possible that she could be pregnant, but again, she hasn't been seen for a while, so no, I actually don't think. We can't really say that she is pregnant for now. Probably not far enough into her pregnancy if she is pregnant. But hopefully she'll have cubs again soon. She is one of the more experienced or older leopardesses here in the south of the reserve on Phinda. And she is likely to breed again. And unlike some other animals here on the reserve, or especially the herd and grazing animals, she doesn't have a particular breeding or time for breeding, so she'll breed throughout the year, or she'll breed once every 2 years if she is successful. She's pregnant for about 3 months, a little bit longer, and then she'll look after her cubs for the first 18 months of their lives before she actually breeds again. So the quickest they'll breed is about once every 2 years, and they'll have about 2 to 3 cubs every time that they do have cubs. So perhaps those impala have moved off. That's why she'd risk moving into the open like she has now. Oh wow, I don't know if you can hear that, but she's scratching her claws. This is going to be amazing. Wow. I thought she might descend all the way down the tree. Often female leopards will descend head first because they're a little bit lighter. It's probably not easy to see now because there's nothing to compare it to. There we go, she's gone down head first. We're going to try and stay with her if she does eventually start, or she is starting to move off. She might be taking a roundabout route to those impala. They're probably about 45 degrees to her left now, but she does seem quite relaxed at the moment. Let's just move a little bit further forward. Hopefully we are able to intercept her a little bit further up on the road. Oops. DB for Angus, DB. Nyoni female at the junction of Main Road and Nyoni. You can make it wait a second.
Sorry, what's the species there?
Nyoni female. There she is off to the right. And just by looking at her body language, it looks like she's not hunting at the moment. She's not trying to stay particularly low. And she's moving through the open areas. She's not trying to move from thicket to thicket. And so we're going to stick with her and try and see what she's up to. Perhaps she'll find another herd of impala to try and hunt. But for now, we're going to send you over to Tswalu.
That was all Craig's idea, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to Tswalu Kalahari. My name is Kyle, and behind camera is Craig, making this all happen. And a fairly warm afternoon we are having. And what a beautiful scene we have out in front here. We just thought it would be a very, very beautiful opening to show you folks how tall this sour grass is. I mean, it is waist height at this point in time. And it is absolutely all these blackthorn, and you can see on the blackthorn this beautiful matchstick looking very, very, very lush at this point in time. We are meandering slowly east, and we are going to be going to find a colony. I'm not going to mention what colony, but it is a very, very amazing colony. And I'll just leave it hanging out there so that your guys' minds can wonder. But it is going to be a very special treat, and I hope everybody's looking forward to a buggy afternoon. I think that's what we're going to be doing this afternoon, going very slowly. We are in a section where lions have been seen, and hopefully we can track down on some tracks, and hopefully we can get a lion. But whatever the Kalahari has to offer, we are most grateful. Lovely. It's pretty warm this afternoon, and we are going to be taking it slowly through this beautiful southern Kalahari. But for now, we're going to send you over to Tristan, and we'll see you later.
Well, as you can see, the hyena den is active, which is a very big... Active actually is a strong word. It's a surprise that there's as many hyenas out and about as there are. You'll see these two that are, well, one's about to fall down the hole inside the kind of entrance. You can just see feet and a little tummy that are sticking out. But everybody is here. Well, all of the older cubs, they're lying around all over the place. Most of them in the shade. It's still a little hot for these guys to get too kind of bubbly and bouncy and make too much of a nuisance of themselves around the car. Well, there goes. I'm sure that one's going to roll down unless there's a little stump that's holding it. Kind of got its feet in the air. They still, I think, a little bit warm to start coming and terrorizing poor Rusty. I think Rusty and Wendy must have nightmares when they come to this den. They must be screaming inside, please don't take us back there, because little bits of them are always pulled at and kind of tried to be bitten, which is never exactly an ideal thing for a car, and always try and dissuade these hyenas from doing that. But sometimes it can be tricky when you've got all of these little marauding mouths and they come from all angles. Hard to keep track of everybody at the same time. Now, there was one adult that was here. I didn't get to see nicely who it was. It just disappeared around the back of the mound, kind of went and put its nose in at the other entrance to the den, and then disappeared behind there. Nothing came out. I was watching carefully because we are trying to see if we can find any sign of Intima's little cub. she had very strong, kind of big belly, and then she had what looks like suckle marks recently on the dam cam. So we suspect that she's got a little one. Just don't know if it's here at this den, or maybe she's utilizing another den that we're not certain of. We haven't seen it. The hyena den itself has been closed for a little bit after the rain. So it's good to just kind of come and catch up with everybody and see that everyone's doing well. I know a lot of you have been asking, would the hyena den flood and all of these kinds of things. So the answer to that is that no, the hyena den did not flood. Oh, that one I told you it was going to fall. You silly sausage. It's called gravity, I'm afraid. They start to learn about it, but it often happens with hyena cubs when they lie at the entrance to their dens. They fall and kind of roll because they get so comfortable. They eventually get themselves into a spot where there's a little head poking out. Who else is there? There's a smaller one that's in there. It's definitely not a newborn, but there is a smaller little head and ears poking out over the top of that little branch. There we go. Safari lover, yes, hyenas do get fleas, like dogs would. These den sites, I'm actually surprised that they're still here at the moment, given the amount of hyenas that we've got, because I would have thought by now that these guys would have vacated and moved to another den. So many of these hyenas all sleeping together inside that mound is a breeding ground for fleas, and often they'll move them because of the smell, and the fleas and everything else starts to really get too much, and you end up with a kind of a den that's not really great. They start scratching a lot, and then the adults normally move them. But it's just so many of them of different ages now. Maybe that's why they're just like, you know what, the little ones need to suck it up and deal with it. But that's the latest edition, well, second latest edition that's just come out. The last time I was here was when we saw it being carried by June on the dam cam. So that's June's little ones. Hearts are here, so are ribbons and corgi. All of them are out. Like I said, it's difficult to see them because some of them are lying in the long grass, but every single one of the cubs that we know of and have seen before is accounted for today. And they're all around, and like I say, there's one adult, which is why they're lying outside of the den. Often during the day, if there's no adults around, then they just go inside and stay there. But maybe with this little one coming out, if there is a brand new one, it might encourage it to just poke its head out a little bit. Let me go back inside. You can see the size difference already in these guys. I mean, there is a fair amount of time between the first set and the last cub. So the age gap is, about 6 months, isn't it? Somewhere around there, maybe a little bit longer. And you can see how much they change from when they're tiny. They still are very, very dark in coloration. There's no spots. And then slowly but surely those spots start to fade. That darkness starts to fade away and the spots start to come through. But initially the spots are going to be very bright and very dark, and almost kind of looks like a leopard coat in some ways, with these dark sort of black blotches and a little bit lighter coat. And then as they start to get older, when you start to get to the old adults, so that spot pattern starts to really fade out. And sometimes these old females and their spots can become very indistinct from afar. You can almost kind of see them as a uniform color rather than a very spotted animal. It's cute though, isn't it? Now, its genitals are hanging out. I know Lawrence said to me that they weren't 100% confirmed to the sex of June's. I'll just check, because she did say to me, there you did. She says daughter. So I think that was confirmed. I'm not sure. But anyway, if it isn't, we'll be able to confirm today if that leg moves slightly. Neil, you're asking if they dig their own den. So what happens with hyenas is that often what they find is they find a den site, or a termite mound that has potentially been excavated already by an aardvark or warthogs or something of that ilk. And then what they do is they modify the den to suit them. So they'll come up to the den and they'll dig out a better sort of entrance. They'll make it sort of suit them. And they're very capable of digging. are hyenas. They've got very strong, powerful front legs with claws on them. It's not sharp claws, but perfect claws to move bulk of soil. And so they dig out a little bit and create this nice little chamber inside of the den itself. And a few years ago, James, who's one of the guides here at Djuma, we had a little camera that was on wheels, and we sent it down into an old hyena den to go and see what was inside there. It was quite interesting to have a look, lots of debris and things in there. And often what you'll find is inside these dens is where it's been excavated out, they'll actually leave a little shelf. And on the shelf is where the little cubs will sleep. And the reason for that is the space becomes smaller on that shelf. And so if something like a leopard or a lion was to come here and there's no adults and they go down that hole, they can't actually get to those cubs inside there. That little shelf will be so narrow that those heads can't get any further, and it helps with them being able to stay a little bit safer. What you'll find sometimes is even with these dens in terms of how they start is they actually can sometimes be shared. I've seen twice a hyena den being shared with the warthog burrow. So warthogs on the one side of the termite mound in their own little den, and hyenas on the other side, which seems super counterintuitive. But if they don't have small little piglets, a big adult warthog is a fairly ferocious animal. And around hyenas, they don't really, or hyenas themselves don't really want to tussle with those big male warthogs, and so you can actually find them kind of sharing dens together. I've also seen probably the coolest sort of sharing of these dens that I've seen was a pair of lesser striped swallows, and they had built their nest just on the top of the entrance to the den, but the den there, the entrance wasn't like this one that's quite high. So here there's a lot of clearance for the hyenas to get in and out. This one was quite narrow and quite difficult, and so the little cubs' heads would just be kind of touching the bottom of the nest. It was so close, and these swallows would swoop in and they would land on their nest, and these cubs would just watch these swallows all day long. It was a very cute thing to watch. Obviously the swallows are way too fast for the hyenas to grab them, and so we never had really an issue with that. But they nested there for ages, and I thought it was very clever on the swallows' behalf, because they ended up with a nest that really very few predators were going to go to. It's not like a snake was going to come and start messing around at the entrance of a hyena den, and that particular den had more cubs than what you see here. I think at that time we had 12 cubs at that den, which is a lot. It was part of the Elephant Plains clan. It was a very, very cool interaction, just watching those swallows going in and out above the heads of the hyenas and building, and the little chicks chirping from above there. I thought it was a amazing sort of not mutually beneficial, but I think from the swallows' point of view, very beneficial place to nest. I've also seen them with porcupines once before. That was quite interesting. I don't know if the porcupines just thought they would use it and got there at night and kind of just went down and then got disturbed because they came scuttling out. But mostly you'll find that it's out there on their own, and especially in a clan this size where there's lots and lots of little ones, they probably would have evicted anybody else had they been here. I'm sure a lot of you are pretty excited about an update on the den. I know we haven't been here as much as what Lauren and Trish generally do. And there's a number of reasons for that, though. The weather, coupled with the fact that before the weather arrived, we were having such bumper drives in many ways that we were seeing a lot of other stuff. And we just kind of got waylaid a little bit. It's not that we're not that interested in it. It's just, the way sometimes the cookie crumbles. To see which adult it is, because if it's in Tima, then it's always worth sticking around, because we think it's her that has the new, well, we know it's her that has the newest cub, but I didn't see who it was. I just saw a tail going around the den. Liam, how many hyenas can live at a den? Oh, depends. I mean, this is, as you can see, by the weeks growing, basically. It's just every sort of 2 months we seem to be getting a new little baby at these dens. There aren't too many females left that would be able to den here, so, given that that most of the adult females have got young ones at the moment, there really isn't too many others. But what have we got here? We've got, June's 1, Corky's 1, We've got the 2 from Ribbon, the 2 from Heart, and so if Intima's got another 2 or 1, that's already, that would be 7 or 8 little ones, and then plus all those moms, so that's another 5, so that would be 13 just at the den itself, and then you've got males that come in and out, so it can be big. The Elephant Plains clan, the one den site they had in 2016 during the height of the drought, I once saw 32 hyenas at that den, all sleeping around the den. It was absolute pandemonium. And if you go up into East Africa, into the Masai Mara, there it's common to see 30 hyenas at a den site, sometimes even more. And those dens are quite interesting, very different to the dens that we see here. They don't have the same massive termite structures that we do. They tend to use much smaller holes in the ground, and so you can have multiple holes and you just get these like heads popping out like little gophers. It's pretty interesting to see the difference in structures that they use there as opposed to here. All right, well, we'll stay here for a little while longer. I mean, most of them are sleeping, but let's see, there's a bit of a breeze blowing and some cloud cover, so maybe they'll get a little bit more active.
For the month of January 2021, we are offering a chance to win a unique WildEarth expedition to the magnificent Tswalu Kalahari. From the ancient Kortai's Koranenberg Mountains to the southern Kalahari's red sand dunes, Tswalu offers what travelers crave most: space and time. The winner will explore this landscape in a vehicle, on foot, or on horseback, with a chance to go behind the scenes with WildEarth and of course meet the meerkats. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend at the luxury Motse Lodge, including flights from either Johannesburg or Cape Town. Open to all WildEarth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, my name is Taylor McCurdy and I'm coming to you from Eco Training here on Pridelands. My most favorite animal in Africa has to be the elephant that's behind me, and this is Kumo, you'll meet him. But elephants just in general, they're really sociable, they're always doing something, and I love to see the interactions between the members of the herd.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth.
My name is Taylor McCurdy and I work for Eco Training. I love hearing from all of the viewers. However, I particularly enjoy those of you who have been watching for a few years. Your questions are just so advanced and they really get me thinking. If you'd like to ask a question on WildEarth, you need to register on our website. Once you've done that, head to the live safari page and submit your questions below the live feed.
In a world full of upheaval, we all need a quiet and safe space to breathe. A place where anxiety and stress don't exist. A place where life carries on as normal. Escape to nature with WildEarth.
Well, welcome back to Tswalu, and this is the colony we were in search for. A beautiful and very, very large colony it is, and they are very, very busy at this point in time. You can hear the sound, the constant buzzing around us. This is a huge colony of leaf-cutter bees. And this is a very, very large colony. This must be the largest colony I have seen so far in my guiding career. And it is such a privilege to see these very hard-working and very busy little bodies. So what you folks are looking at there is, you'll see that there's little dark spots. That is the entrance to a tunnel that leads into a chamber. And these little bees have been noted of digging nearly down to 2 meters at depth, which is pretty remarkable from such a small little organism. And then the little mound structures that you can see there, that is the soil that has been excavated from these constructed tunnel and nest. And very distinctive, you can almost see they look like little pellets. And that's from the insect reversing out from the tunnel and actually drawing back soil with its front legs. And those legs pushing the soil actually rolls it up into a tiny little ball. And a very busy little animal we are busy viewing here. Really remarkable to be seeing this. And we are sitting right at the edge of the nest site. And this specific species is familiar. Wild woman, the sound is very cool. And it makes you think of a swarm of African honeybees, which I would not be standing this close to African honeybees because of their very aggressive nature. These bees, they are still part of the bee family. So they fall into a group called, so let me just note on that quickly. These guys are very reluctant to sting. They'll only sting if they are harassed in a very, very strong manner. Otherwise, they just go by doing their thing. Myself and Craig are literally, sitting on the edge of this nest site. And so bees, wasps, these guys fall into a group called Hymenoptera. And obviously they have a very similar, one wants to fly up my nose, very similar body plan. And this specific species is Fidelia major. Very, very beautiful and very amazing thing to be witnessing. I've seen it once or twice in Tswalu. When I think it was about a month ago, we were going out west to look for a specific site just like this. And unfortunately, that colony had already moved off. So each individual is creating its own nest. So a little tunnel leading down into a nest, and where they are provisioning this nest with pollen and nectar. And this is like other bees, they also do this behavior. And they have got a remarkable ability of digging, as you can see from the amount of excavation that these bees have gone through. Really remarkable sound and really amazing to see them. So what's different to the African honeybee is that if you look at honeybees, they collect pollen on their hind legs, whereas in this species would hold pollen with specialized hairs on the abdomen, so the underside of the belly. So like your normal honeybee, they'll have a specialized hair patch on the inside of the hind leg, or the very, very last set of legs, which would hold pollen. These guys have special pollen hairs under the abdomen, and they have a very, very distinctive body plan and as well as appearance. They are very, very busy, so to get close to one is a difficult task, but I bet you Craig is doing a phenomenal job there. I really can't see what he's seeing, but you're going to see almost like it's got a very hairy appearance to this specific bee. And it will have white hairs. So around the legs it'll have white hairs, and then as well as through the middle section called the thorax, and as well as the abdomen. The abdomen looks like it's got very defined lines or segments that will have white hairs also running around the end. I mean, the sound is just, for me, phenomenal. So I could walk right into this colony and they would swarm around me, but they would be very hesitant to sting. I would actually have to grab one and hold it for this bee to sting me. but a really amazing sound to be in and amongst. But we're going to enjoy this for a little bit, but we're going to send you off to Tristan to see what he has for you.
Beehives are the most fascinating things, that's for sure. It's amazing to kind of hear them and see them, and we know how bees are something that we all need to take a lot more sort of cognizance of, given how they've been, and for how their numbers are declining. But talking about numbers and things being busy, Corky's just arrived at the den. So it wasn't her that I saw earlier, definitely not, because her ears are very tatty. It's quite easy to recognize her. She's not a difficult hyena to notice, but she's lying in the grass off to the left with her cub at the moment. She chased the others away briefly, bar Ribbon's little ones, who kind of she gently nudged rather than chased. The others were all disciplined a little bit, but Ribbon's ones were allowed to kind of come up to her, and she was fairly gentle with them, which is an indication of the sort of ranking within this clan at the moment. You know, Corky used to be the sort of high-ranking female, or the matriarch within this grouping, and through a series of events, she dropped down one, and basically Ribbon has taken the mantle since. So actually, I mean, how this hyena is still alive, I don't know. She has gone through some serious stuff. You know, she's been attacked by a male lion and somehow managed to get out of that. She was injured very badly for a while, looking quite sick and really not in great condition. Somehow came back from that. So she's a real little survivor, is Corky. She's got the wounds and battle scars to prove it. You look at her ears and how they look, and general body condition. She's got quite a few scars on her. It's been a fight to the top, and then to kind of survive after that. But she's done really well, and the clan is done nicely. You know, we haven't had a huge success of this clan in terms of growth for a while. Obviously, the last batch of cubs did quite well. They all seem to kind of do okay, but it's been a while since we've had this many little ones at the dens, and all sort of seemingly doing really well. What's going to be interesting, though, is that of these cubs that you see here, so of the 6 that we currently have, it's an even, well, it's not an even split, sorry, do we have 7? We have 7, don't we? No, it's 6, that's right. So it's an even split, 3 boys, 3 girls. And then obviously we'll see what Intima does. So it's nice that if we got 3 girls that make it to adulthood, it'll be really good to have another 3 hyenas that are contributing to the population of the Djuma clan. And it amazes me how far these guys are going. You know, that's the one cool thing about being on Torchwood and Buffelshoek and Chitwa. We're starting to see just how far our clan is shifting and moving. We know they're on Buffelshoek, we know they go on to Torchwood, we know they go on to Chitwa, and they extend past that, so they've really got a nice sized area. Hopefully. What's going on, Franklin? Franklin just got a fright. I don't know if maybe there's another hyena on its way towards him. I mean, Corky hasn't really reacted, and none of the cubs have reacted, but Franklin just got a bit of a fright. Often when we hear that Franklin sound, normally if we're tracking leopards, that's a great sign that the leopard is close. But in these guys, maybe it's just, like I say, another hyena. That's definitely not the same hyena adult that I saw just now. I think the adult I had just now was Intima. It looked like the ears were still in very good condition in comparison. I mean, June is super easy to tell, and so is Corky, and even Ribbon. You know, her ear is very distinct. Heart and Intima slightly from a distance can be a little bit more tricky to kind of pick up, just based off the ears themselves. All right, we'll sit here a little while longer, see if any other adults arrive. Like I say, it is getting a bit cooler. Maybe the little ones start to get more playful. And in the meantime, let's send you to Steve and the giraffe. Very good. Welcome back. We have found a spotted animal in the thickets. And, well, they're not very easy to see at the moment. As you can see, even a large animal such as this broad-chested giraffe is obscured by the vegetation. That's as good a view as we can get. We're hoping he's going to come out a bit more and show us himself. Wow, I just heard a spectacled weaver. I can't say I've heard many of them or seen one here before. Pretty sure that was a spectacled weaver. Beautiful thing about bird calls is you can identify a lot more birds that you don't end up seeing. He is very shy, everybody. He's bearing in mind lion's been around, so he's being very sort of cautious in his approach, very slow in his movements. I'm going to play a call on my hat to see if it was indeed the spectacled weaver I heard. Definitely a spectacled weaver. Well, it's very possible to have them here. They should be here. I've never seen one. I have heard them before. Another one calling off in the distance. Very nice. Carry is peekaboo. You can imagine if he was able to do so with his hands, he would do that with over his eyes, wouldn't he? His big hooves. Bearing in mind, everybody, this is live, and this action is coming to you live from the African wilderness, where this male giraffe is just chilling. Anything could happen. We see many things happen live. Anything sort of out of the blue just occurs, but I don't think much is going to happen with this fellow. I think he's the same guy we saw the other day who on Torchwood, who also just stared at us for a long time. I can't really tell because I can't see his face. I'm not sure, Sinak. I'm not sure if there were any giraffe in Eurasia. I think they evolved on the African continent from an animal that was much smaller, and the okapi is sort of evidence. I'm not certain. Probably before, when an animal like the giraffe was on Eurasia, it was more like a deer type animal, more like a large antelope or medium-sized antelope. Because there's no remnants of an animal like a giraffe on the Asian continent. So, but I'm not sure. There could be some fossil records, but I think the giraffe evolved exclusively in Africa due to the fact that it was once tropical, and the tropical nature of Africa afforded a smaller antelope the ability to survive. And then as the savannas opened due to the changes in climate, we got open savannas and the trees got taller, and the giraffe just got a longer and longer and longer neck. And the evolutionary adaptations are twofold. One was to reach food out of reach from others, and the second was that males with the longer neck were more able to compete for females, and so obviously that started perpetuating a longer neck. The one that was slightly longer was a bit more able to get more food and able to be more competitive from a fighting point of view. And slowly but surely that evolved. But we're talking over a very long period of time, because bearing in mind they've got the same number of cervical vertebrae in the neck as we do, only 7. So it takes a very long time for something to change like that. It doesn't just happen. One generation would be shorter, and there'd just be one who'd be a little bit slightly incrementally different, and that one would benefit. And slowly that slight change would eventually just become more and more, and eventually over time you see an enormous change from what was once upon a time a very short neck. Ian, a giraffe, they don't actually have a proper sleep. Most ruminants will just tuck their legs up under them if they lie down and ruminate. But giraffe do have the difficulty of standing up. So often if you find a giraffe that has been lying down or is sitting down, that they often do so in a little bit of an open clearing. They don't normally do it in the thickets, and they do it with the wind to their back and face into the darkness. And it takes them a good few seconds to get from the sitting crouched position to a full standing position. And obviously in that time, they are vulnerable to predation. But they only need to do that for about 20 minutes a day. Only 20 minutes. The action of ruminating actually provides an enormous amount of rest. And you wonder how the giraffe doesn't have sore legs and sore feet. Well, their leg bones are incredibly strong, incredibly thick. And if we had to take a normal bone of ourselves or of any other main animal, you cut it open, there'd be an enormous amount of marrow inside. Quite a thin bone, to be honest. But the giraffe's bone is a proper cudgel. It's a thick ossified beam, which obviously provides lots and lots of strength. And then the skin around the legs is extremely tight. And scientists from NASA have actually come up with they've actually mimicked the giraffe, because obviously many people who went to space and people who are on flights, airplanes, have you ever noticed that if you're on an airplane, after a few hours of flight, you get very swollen ankles? Raise your hand right now if that is true. That happens to me all the time. So they came up with space socks. And tights or leggings. So if you wear leggings or something tight when you fly, it actually keeps the blood from pooling in your feet. And that eliminates that swelling in the feet. There's a very nice sort of study done in a sort of thing shown on Inside Nature's Giants, where they dissect and really go into the giraffe. And there's this machine where this guy in NASA, obviously, he's cycling the machine in a circle. It's this big thing that causes sort of the same sort of pressures that an astronaut or a jet pilot will go through. And the guy cycling, because he's actively moving, is pumping the blood, and he's keeping his body rhythm and his heart rate and everything at the same level. And the guy who's on the opposite side of this thing that's spinning is sort of just sitting there, almost in a cage, as it were. And the blood starts to pool to his feet, which is what happens when you start reaching certain G-forces and gravity. And the blood starts to go down from the head down to the feet. We call it blood pooling. And you start to feel very faint and very nauseous, and you actually can pass out. But that is easily eliminated due to the fact that NASA and those scientists came up with space socks. So by the astronauts wearing these very tight leggings against their legs and feet, they're able to tighten and constrict the skin around the lower portion of the body, and it prevents the blood from pooling there and keeps it flowing in the body. It prevents you from getting lightheaded. And that was all derived by the giraffe and their incredible ability to maintain their sort of low blood pressure, even though they're in a very high blood pressure system. Their heart is incredibly powerful and incredibly thick to be able to pump the blood up into the brain. And that increases blood pressure, and you'd think that with all of that, the animal would be quite susceptible to getting injured, to blood clots, to passing out. But together with the socks or the tight skid around the legs, they prevent the blood pooling. So that eliminates one of the things, which enables them to stand for long periods of time. And then up in the head, behind the neck, sort of where the capillaries and blood network come into the brain, there's this huge network of capillaries that work in both directions. The blood that goes into the brain that's oxygenated and the blood that's coming out of the brain that's deoxygenated sort of goes into a huge network of capillaries from a large network or large artery into a very small, narrow network. And so what it does is essentially slows down the speed of the blood. So when the giraffe drops its head, you can imagine if it dropped its head below its heart, the pressure would be enormous, and you could expect it to burst. Any engineer who talks about pressure and in that regard would understand that
putting something that's got high pressure at a low angle can burst. And so the giraffe's got this very, very incredible network of capillaries in the brain that slow down the blood going in and out of the brain, so eliminates them from getting head rushes and passing out.
Well, we're still... Well, no, not still with Hyena Den. We left Hyena Den because impalas went buck wild while we were sitting there, and wanted to try and catch up with them quickly so that we could get to where they are, but unfortunately they've gone quiet now. But it's somewhere not far from the den, so I don't know if maybe there's something lurking. We'll just have to see. I just want to bumble slowly along this road, just check if I can't pick up a track somewhere to indicate. Could just be a mistaken identity. It was just one impala by itself shouting, and I spotted an impala deep in the block. But this area is no ways you can off-road here. It's way too thick and way too wet at the moment for any off-roading in this area. What I'm trying to find is some sort of a track just to indicate that there actually is something here and it wasn't a case of mistaken identity and a little diker that was running or something. It sometimes can happen for that, or even a hyena, for example, walking through the bush. Sometimes impalas from a distance can't see nicely. They shout like that. The shout reminded me of when they know something's there, but they can't quite pick it up. The distance between each shout was that little bit longer. You often get that kind of alarm call when a leopard's up in a tree or on a mound, where they can kind of see there's a disturbance, but they can't work out what exactly it is. Nothing, we'll just head back to the den again. I'm going to spend a little bit more time there. Definitely not this far. But I'll go around one more time and just check again in case it hadn't come off the block yet. I think that's the plan, is just to go around once more and just see if there's any sign once again on the other side.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a beautifully overcast andBeyond in Ngala. We have got some pretty big clouds rolling in, and it is a really stunning afternoon. The temperature is just right. So at the moment, it is looking like a stunning afternoon. My name is Tessa. I'm going to be your guide on safari this afternoon here at andBeyond in Ngala. Behind the camera, we have Sebastian. And this afternoon, we are looking for the Birmingham Pride. But it's a really nice, cool afternoon. You can see that there's a lot of clouds coming in. And so with this cool weather, luckily for us, hopefully, that means the cats will be a little bit more active. And you can see there's quite a lot of cloud cover coming in at the moment. So the first thing I actually did this afternoon was go and check on the Birmingham lioness with her den site. She has moved it, but we managed to find where it was this morning. And we actually got a glimpse of her crossing over the river, believe it or not. So she's actually left that den site. We don't know if she's left the cubs there or not. But what I'm hoping is if we go back a little bit later, she might be crossing back towards the den site. Especially since it is nice and cool, she might be going out looking for a new den site or even hunting. Maybe we'll catch her coming back a little bit later. But you can see that it really is quite a beautiful day here. So I'm going to carry on towards the Timbavati riverbed, and I'm going to send you over to Tswalu with some bees.
Now you can understand where the term comes from, busy like a bee, because they are just relentless. absolutely relentless. So if you look at this very diverse order, so it's a very big grouping of an accumulation of different species. The order Hymenoptera is a very diverse group of animals. So if you look at it, it'll be wasps, sawflies, bees, and even ants. Busy like a bee. Now you can see where the terminology comes from. These guys are relentless, absolutely non-stop here. They are so busy. So if you look at this very large group Hymenoptera, which these bees will be part of, you would also have wasps, things like sawflies, things like ants. All these animals have biting mouthparts, but some of them can actually be modified for sucking and even lapping up liquids. But one thing that will always be present, mandibles, those interlocking, moving mouthparts, mandibles. And very, very incredible. Obviously, that is for collecting pollen or collecting nectar. The sucking mouthparts will be for nectar, and then obviously the moving mouthparts will be for collecting pollen. Really remarkable. But if you look at this little family group, the genus Fidelia, if you look at this, there's about 10 different species or 10 similar species within the region, but they would slightly vary in body color and slightly vary in shape as well. And I did catch a question just before you left us here. Do these bees produce honey? So looking at them, that was a corn cricket biting you there, bud. Corn cricket was just biting Craig on the back. So looking at these bees, if you look at African honeybees, where you'd normally collect honey from is from those multi-chambered cells that they create, and that would be out of the structure would be wax that they create these cells, and one would collect the honey from that structure. Whereas in over here this is a loose aggression, and these bees are basically creating chambers in the sand. And what they're doing is that they've got a nest that goes down into a chamber. They could have a few entrances into this nest, and hence the name leafcutter bees. This is out of just a guesstimation. So they go off and cut leaves. That is obviously the genus's name, leafcutter bees. But what the leaves are used for is, I think, to put the pollen in for their young. Obviously, pollen and nectar is collected for the young, and the pollen will be collected from a variety of different flowers, depending whatever is available. They do have sometimes specific flowers that they enjoy, but pollen is a very widely used thing to attract an insect to the flower, and obviously you want that pollen to go from one flower to the next. But you are loose aggressions in sandy areas like this, and you find these guys very, very prominent through the western arid regions. You can find them. They are very widely distributed across South Africa, but they do prefer these western drier regions. But really remarkable to see this aggression, and I love things like this. I could sit here for hours just geeking out, and you only find out these underlying questions, or you only realize the underlying questions once you take the time and you stop and you observe, because otherwise you're just going to go through being oblivious. You need to stop and appreciate. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes just to really appreciate what Craig is doing there for you, because finding a spot where you can focus on a bee and get a good view of it is a very difficult task, and he's doing a phenomenal job right now. But I want you guys, I'm just going to move slightly off Craig's right-hand side here, just to give you a better sound. And once I step in here, Craig, I don't want to be in your shadow there, but I think I'm going to be. But I'm just going to step into this patch over here where there's no nest, and you'll hear them start swarming around me. And not one is stinging me, which is quite incredible. You do have this background thought that, you're going to be stung. I've been caught in a swarm of bees. Not caught, they actually just move past us. If you look at African honeybees, when they move, they're obviously carrying very, very high-prized individuals. And if they're moving a queen bee, they move from point A to point B. And I've been caught where a swarm has basically gone over my head, just like this there. But this is remarkable. I'm not in any nest over here. I'm in a patch where there's no nest, so obviously respect number one for everything great and small. But it is such a treat to be in and amongst these incredible insects. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes just to tap into this free energy. One or two of them come very close and I think, oh my word, it's going to sting me. But they are very relentless to sting at that. Angie, how big are these bees in comparison to honeybees? Angie, I would be really lying to you if I knew exactly how big an African honeybee is. But these little guys, if I can remember correctly, let me just not make a mistake now, these guys are between 10 and 20 millimeters long. And I'm sure honeybees, African honeybees, will be slightly smaller in total length size. But for their small size, they are very, very busy. I'm sorry, I think the question was what would eat or feed on these bees, if I'm not mistaken. Various types of birds would go after a little snack like this. There's very specialized bee eaters would be a very, very big threat to these leafcutter bees. And then various types of other insects. Even these corn crickets that we've got around at the moment, if they were able to grab one coming out of burrow, that corn cricket would munch down on this bee very quickly. But yeah, definitely birds. Birds would be a big factor or a threat to these beautiful and busy little bodies. And I can't believe how big the site is. I have found a site, but the site must have only been a quarter of what we are busy looking at right now. But really remarkable. And they'll be here for a couple of days. They'll obviously do what they need to do, and then they are gone. And then once the sand blows over this, the evidence of them being here is totally gone until those young ones are ready to emerge and go start the cycle all over again. The smaller things, eh? Wow. Sinak, how important are these bees in the ecosystem, in the Kalahari ecosystem? I would say vitally important. If you look at pollen moving from one species of plant to another, it is of vital importance. Just like every little organism plays a massive role within this vast and very, very complex system. But yes, they can be specific. I can't remember to what family group, but they can be fairly specific on what flower they pollinate. So if you remove this species out of this area, you eliminate the pollination of that specific family group of flowering plant. And then that in turn could have effect on a type of Hymenoptera bug. It then could affect a beetle. It then could affect a bird. You name it. The chain thereafter of effects could be massive. So they do play a very, very important role by my general understanding. I feel that every single little critter has a role to play. Even like us, our decision making, we have a massive role in the world and the people on it and the organisms on it. So everything from the microbes in the soil to the air we breathe, to the elephants, to the humans, we all have a very, very specific role. But it's understanding that role and how important that role is. And we are just starting to understand. So that Kalahari Endangered Ecosystem project that we are running here on Tswalu, we are looking at global temperature change and how that is going to affect certain very key role species within the system. And obviously these individuals, these role players, have a massive effect, not just on one or two mammals, but then they have effect on plants and they have effect on insects. So, understanding the role of species, including ourselves, is very, very important. And that's why we should always do things with respect. We should always do things with a great understanding for the greater whole of this beautiful big blue planet. I just love these little things because I just get total goosebumps. I love it how they reverse quickly out of their little tunnels. It almost looks like they're They're shifting very, very quickly, and you can see how they scroll back the soil out of that excavated nest. But a very beautiful sight. We've got the light in the right manner just for you guys to see what's going on here. Can you go down there? Can you actually see all that over there? I don't think with the light. Well, from here, what we're going to do is we're obviously going to leave this beautiful colony, let them do what they're doing. And from here, I think we're going to continue our search for creepy crawlies, just like I mentioned on our introduction. We're going to look for all the small things this afternoon for you guys. Wow, it is just absolute pacing up and down on those individuals. All right, but we're going to send you over to Tristan and see what he has for you.
Carl, it's very cool that you're spending time with the bees and creepy crawlies. I think it's the most fascinating world. That's one of the reasons I miss our bushwalks so much, is that we used to do a lot of that. Now, you'll notice I'm not at the hyena den anymore. There's a very good reason for that. Two very good reasons. One is that it's been quiet on the reserve, as we know, the last few days. So there's two vehicles. What's going on here that wanted to head in that direction? The second thing is that I had Impala's alarm calling. What's causing a disturbance here? Franklins are very, very upset here. They're up in the tree. Can go in a little bit here and just check and see. Just want to check the ground, how hard it is. We're all right over here for now. Generally, when you see marulas, you're all right. I feel like I'm being toyed with cats at the moment. I don't know why. It's like all these little signs everywhere for them. Yeah, we're all good here. That's where we are now, is Sabi and kind of Cubs area, where we've seen them a few times now. Something's definitely disturbed these Franklins to have them up in the tree like this. And it's not just one. There's a Swainson spurfowl that's up, and then there's a few Natal Franklins and crested Franklins also making a noise. So it's not just one Franklin. Really hard, so we're all good. Somewhere in this little section there's birds. So the Swainsons is quite quiet, funny enough. It's this crested Franklin that's making the alarm. I don't know if you can hear it in the background. And they make this call when they've seen something, and when they're up like this, we know that there's something here. Could be. Let me go forward here quickly. Sounds like just in front here. One crested's gone to the ground. It's a nice marula tree here, so maybe there's something on the ground here. There's also Mulawati's kind of vibe in here. There goes that Franklin that's just flown away. Just trying to check all these trees just to see if there isn't something hanging from one of them, and maybe there was a catch here. I don't know. This grass is so long. If a leopard doesn't want to be seen in this, you're not going to see it. There's definitely something that caused much panic here between these Franklins. All right, I can't really go further that way because it starts to go down the slope, which is not going to be good. I'm going to just go back to the road and drive the road slowly and hope maybe we get lucky and something pops out there.
How insane is that animal?
This is out of this world. Fantastic. Good, Mama.
Wow, what a way to start off.
Just such an incredible privilege to be out here. It just keeps on delivering.
There you go, there you go. Heart is pumping right now.
3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Look at this, everybody. We've got a live kill.
The croc's holding the tail. It's holding tight. Lucky wildebeest.
There's nowhere to go. This is a disaster in the making.
This is the first leucistic zebra I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, here comes a lion. Run, little guy. Go on.
Something that I have never seen before in my entire life that you are now watching live.
My heart is in my mouth, everybody.
Look at this. It's gonna make it. It's going, it's going.
This is just too magical. Hi, little guys. That's great, isn't it?
Has it just pretended to be dead? That is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Look at that. Scuba Steve has got a friend.
You got a friend in me. It couldn't be a better morning. This is just too special.
Oh my goodness, we've got a turtle.
How epic is the fact that we're coming to you live on the Chobe River? It's the most incredible feeling to be here. This is live and we're in Rwanda. This is a very, very different adventure, charged with emotion.
Look at that little zebra about to be born. There's the head. Oh, you clever mare. Well done.
I did not think I would ever face my fears like this.
Welcome back to Twin Dams, everybody, where we thought we'd just check on our weavers and see if maybe we've got another Gabbar goshawk. Oh, that's a weaver. Weavers are coming back. They go off on little feeding sprees and then they arrive back again. Tristan is working hard this afternoon with his alarm calls and finding tracks. He was just trying to tell me about some more tracks. I had to cut him off there quickly. But this weaver colony is probably approaching the end. Well, there's a female on top who's got something nice and juicy for her chick. At the top. What have you got there, my dear? That looks delicious. Don't know what it is. Something very grub-like. Here is the male, a village weaver. Very easy to identify the village weaver. One of the masked weavers, red eye, black mask up onto the nose. All arriving back. They all go off on feeding sprees. Go off to feed together. Obviously that makes life a little bit safer. But then the males don't bring any food back for the chicks. Only the females. The males have done their part. Built the nest, even if the roof isn't always as stable as you'd like it to be. Carried well this time of year, yes, of course. They are very busy this time of year. But as the season changes on and the breeding stops, that busyness is reduced to one of just feeding. Just getting by. What a life. Wouldn't it be an interesting life if all you had to do is just move around and eat? That's it, nothing else. Move around, eat, have a little bit of a nap, eat some more. Oh, check these two females have got some more food. So they'll bring back caterpillars. What have they got? Definitely looks like caterpillars, doesn't it? Now she's going to go into the nest to feed her chick. Obviously, you know that there's definitely chicks when they're bringing back bits and pieces. Oh, she got a bit wet somewhere along the way. What is that? Yeah, it looks like a caterpillar that she's murdered. Okay, are you going to feed that to a chick now? One chick will swallow the whole thing, I wonder. She's thinking, am I going to give it to chick number 1, 2, or 3? Off they go again. Here we go. That's right. Gabar goshawk just came in. Oh, that was interesting. A goshawk just flew straight over. He's coming back for round 2. Let's see if Theo can get him. Here he comes. Do. Air Force. Roll the roll the attack music. There is a goshawk. I think it's probably the gabar. Probably the same one as the other day. They saw it coming, and many studies have shown the reason why birds flock is because they see predators from a distance, and the gabar is a bird that pursues prey for the most part. Seeing it raid the nest the other day was very cool to see. I've never seen it before, but their general port of call for catching is to chase and to smash birds out of the air. But they've done studies with pigeons or doves and a peregrine falcon, where they released a tame peregrine falcon, and they started with one dove. Obviously, they probably put seed on the floor or whatever, and they started with peregrine falcon a kilometer or 2 away, and they let it go. And they increased the number of birds, and they saw the success rate of the peregrine falcon in catching. And as the number increased, so the success rate of the peregrine falcon decreased dramatically. Okay, it's got a very dark eye. Red beak. Bless you, Theo. And so that's why I was saying before, the birds will feed in groups, because there's less chance of them being spotted or of them being caught, and there's a heightened chance of the predator being spotted in good enough time. It looks like the gabar for sure. Definitely gives them more chance to move, and we saw them move away a good 5 seconds before that goshawk arrived, and they are very fast. Like a fighter jet, these little accipiters. Don't worry, everybody. There are plenty of weavers. The weavers, it's like cat and mouse, everybody out here. These animals have all evolved. So there's a record of a hunting bird flying level at 80 kilometers an hour for 4.5 kilometers. They will hunt birds, bats, and even rodents. Have you got it? Off he goes. Off he goes to the south. He's going to do a loop. Going to do a loop and maybe come back. You'll see the weavers have gone off to hide in the bushes. No one takes chances now. It's quite incredible. You notice how sometimes certain bird species will abandon their chicks to keep themselves alive, and others will fight till the death to keep their chicks alive. Obviously, each has got a different strategy, and each strategy has its benefits. But as an adult, if you die, you don't have the chance to breed again. If you lose a chick, you're still alive, and you could potentially rear more chicks. So I know it's different strategies, and you might have different sort of opinions on it. But some species will choose one over the other. For example, I've seen giraffe defend their youngsters to a point against lions, and then they just have to. They just, if they go any further, they'll both die. So there's a sacrifice that happens. Zebras, on the other hand, often the male puts himself in the line of fire against predators. So these are strategies that are older than time, or maybe not that old, but they've been in existence for a very long time. And slowly but surely, the weavers will start to return back. There's one in there already. I knew something was going on when a female with food in her mouth bolted. And you know, she's going somewhere. And here they slowly come back. See, just like that, they return. Miss Mason's class, you don't know how they protect themselves? By flying away. That's it, there's no other way. The Gabar goshawk is far bigger than they are. And it comes with talons and claw and beaks that are very sharp. And so the only way they can get away is by evading. But by hanging out in these colonies, that is defense in its own right. It's like going for a walk on your own. You feel a little bit safer when you're in a group, don't you? Just because there's always the chance it'll be somebody else who gets taken out. And as the predator-prey relation continues, these birds are constantly on edge, constantly living in the moment. Predation can come from any time, and that's why you often find birds are very busy. We've noted before how busy they were. When they come down to drink, they're very busy, they're very active, they fly at the smallest of sounds or the smallest of movements. And that is as a result of predators being very, very quick and surprising them. But with the study of the peregrine falcon being the fastest the fastest organism in the planet, the more birds there were, I think it reached a number of 50 or 100 or something. I can't remember the number, but definitely hit a number when the peregrine was then not able to catch any food. So you probably find colonies like this reach a certain number where they feel safe, and they are almost then immune to a degree from predation. But then probably the other day the Gabar was so frustrated he couldn't catch an adult. He just went and ripped open the nest to catch a chick. I know it's sad to see everybody, but all these animals have to survive in some way. And there are far more weavers than there are goshawks, as is the balance of nature. It all returns back to the source. It all returns back into the soil, back into the vegetation, back into the nests, back into the insects, back into the cycle of life. See, they're all just shaking it off. That wasn't too much for them. They've seen it all before. And, well, how exciting. We'll move on shortly, I think, but let's send you back over to andBeyond, Phinda. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live. 3, 2, 1, you are live, you are live.
Welcome back to andBeyond Phinda, everyone. And we have found some lions. As it's starting to get a little bit cooler, this male and his brother were seen early this morning, and now it seems like they've come across a female. At this point, we haven't really seen them do much as of yet, as we can expect with lions. They can spend a lot of their day asleep. Unlike bigger animals like elephants, which would spend a lot of their day feeding, lions really do like to make sure that they catch up on enough sleep. But when they are active, it's very, very interesting to watch them. So let's just give it a few moments and see what they get up to. But for now, with this male off on his own and a female, with a female, that could be a possibility that they're mating. So it's usually kind of the female will usually facilitate the mating in terms of when she's active and gets up, then the male might try and follow her and see if she's willing. And when they do mate, they can mate up to 3 times an hour, every 20 minutes or so. Obviously, though, here in the bush, anything is possible. And it doesn't look like that either of them are really interested in anything at the moment. I just see the females flicking her ears. You can see a lot of insects flying around here, so it's possible that there's some flies that keep on landing on her. And as you can see, she's found a little bit of shelter under a tiny car apple. There are some bigger thickets around here. It wasn't very hot today, so it's possible that they were kind of lounging around somewhere close by here. And as it started to cool down, they maybe moved a little bit. Often when lions are mating, they'll get up, mate, and then get up again and move a little bit. So throughout the day, they might move 50 meters at a time from thicket to thicket or from place to place. And could be a reason why they're out in the sun or out in the open at the moment. It's not very sunny right now. The sun has just kind of dipped behind this hillside on your left of your screen. You can see that beautiful male lion. You can see some wind blowing through his mane as well. And you can see his mane is quite dark on the tips as you get further down towards his back. And if you were to turn around, you'd see it's quite dark all the way down his chest. And even to the upper part of his front legs, you'll see it's very black. It's something, the lineage of these males, I think, is from the Kalahari. And it's something that the Kalahari male lions are very well known for, is that dark black mane. You can see that neither of them are breathing very, very hard. And their tummies don't look very full either. So it's likely that these lions haven't eaten today or probably haven't eaten yesterday either. Depends on the size of what they had caught. And as guides, we often get asked questions about how often do lions eat. It's actually quite a difficult question to answer because, like I mentioned with that leopard earlier, they are very opportunistic. So if they do get a chance, no matter how small the meal is, they'll definitely try and hunt. So at the moment, these two lions, it doesn't look like they're very interested in hunting, but for instance, if an impala or any other grazing animal, for instance, were to walk close by, they would definitely try and hunt it. I don't imagine they'd be very successful though, because they're not very well hidden. I mentioned earlier that they're out in the open. And lions, because they're quite big, strong, muscular animals, they rely on the element of surprise when they do hunt. So in this instance, they don't have very good cover. If you look quite closely at them, I don't know if you can zoom in there, Glenn, on the male lion's ear, you can see there's a big tick on its ear. So it's another thing that lions will have to deal with out here in the bush, is they'll have to deal with a lot of kind of pests and animals that will feed off of them, and they actually aren't very well known to be hygienic. So prides of lions will always have a particular smell. It's a way of how they will identify each other and how they know from a distance, or if they perhaps following another member of the pride scent, that it is in fact a member of their own pride and not another one. because they have a particular stench about them, and each pride will apparently be different. Jerome, that's a good question. So I'm not necessarily sure about ticks and fleas. I think they are quite hardy animals in terms of they're able to maintain a state of almost dormancy. And so there would have been, how ticks usually work is they'll cling onto an animal. It depends on the life cycle of the tick. There are ticks with different stages of life cycles. So eggs will be laying in the grass, and when they hatch, they'll then cling onto an animal that has walked past them, and then they may feed off that animal, grow bigger, and then either mate with another tick and lay eggs on the grass, or what could happen is they would fall off, then they'd cling onto another animal, grow up, or feed a bit more, molt again, and then fall off. That's a 3-stage tick, and then they'd finally mate on their 3rd cycle. So because they're able to do this, they're not necessarily more abundant at certain times of rain because they're kind of lying in wait in the grass at all times. Just getting a little bit of stirring from the male, but I think it could be just a little bit of irritation or perhaps a bit of uncomfortable. If you look around him, there's a lot of rocks. So maybe because he's been lying down there for quite a long time. Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. Looks like he's got a bit of a scar on his right eye. Wow. Not a very graceful position, is it? Let's see if he actually tries to get up and move around. He might try and pester the female to see if she's maybe willing to mate at this time. Obviously, I've just got her, so I don't really know much about what they were doing earlier. But they could just be in between a session of mating. But to be honest, it doesn't actually look like he's very interested. Often you'll see the male trying to get her up. But beautiful light on him now. Miss Mason's class, good question. They can run upwards of 60 kilometers an hour. So, but it's not very often that you see them moving that quickly. So it depends on, they'll only really run that quickly when they've been able to get close enough to a prey animal. And then when they are close enough, then they'll use that speed that they do possess to try and catch it. But otherwise, you'll basically never see an animal or a lion or any animal out here you'll never see it waste any energy. So you'll only ever see them exert their top speeds when they do have a very good chance of catching prey and obviously getting energy back into their bodies. I always say that out here it's just a game of either consuming energy and using energy when it's necessary and when you think that the benefits will outweigh whatever energy that you do use. Mulalo, a very good question for such a young 7-year-old boy. Probably difficult to answer because Mulalo, we can't ask them ourselves. But just from what I've observed, I don't know if you've got dogs at home, Mulalo, but often with my dogs I've seen them sleeping and you'd see them moving their feet, acting like they're running. And often you'd hear them bark. So I've seen similar behavior from animals out here in the bush, such as lions. So when they are asleep, you might see them suddenly stir awake like they got a fright from something in a dream. Or you'd see them twitch their bodies, move their feet like they are running or chasing after something. So I'd say that I think they do, but I'm not really sure. I mentioned his mane earlier, so now you can see that mane on the top of his front right leg. You can see it almost reaches down to what his elbow would be. It's quite confusing because it looked like it could be his knee, but that's actually his elbow there on his front leg that his mane reaches up to. So we're going to sit here for the next few minutes and just see if these lines do get up to anything. But for now, we're going to send you to another live location.
Angus seems to be absolutely smashing his drive this afternoon. Lots going on for him. A little double-banded sandgrouse in the road in front of us. It's been an interesting afternoon. We've had alarm calls, but nothing. And I just came across a hyena that was bolting into Torchwood at high speed. Now, it's early in the day for hyenas to be bolting around. And the last update we got on the wild dogs was that they came into this area. So maybe, I don't know, just throwing that out there, it's a possibility. The Pungwe pack was last seen in Koro side, crossing into Torchwood, so you never know. When hyenas are bolting around at this time of the day, then generally something's afoot. Maybe they heard some alarm calls from those leopards around Torchwood. It's not too far from here. You never know. But we're going to go and investigate after we watch these two waddle down the road for a little bit. Sometimes it's nice just to be quiet like this, just to hear if there's any sounds that are potentially creeping in that you could use to find animals, whether it be a branch breaking from an elephant or the movement of oxpeckers, anything like that can help you with finding animals. So sometimes just taking a quiet moment is a good thing. Well, I think the plan is that we're going to slowly head back to where we had the last visual of Tandy's cub. Hopefully we'll have some luck down that side.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, it is indeed marula season. And I have another fellow over here who is enjoying eating the marulas. Oh, he gave us a bit of a head shake before. We're nowhere near the tree, my friend. We're not going to try to steal your marulas. Yes, that's it. You walk backwards. Here's a young bull. Well, he's in his 20s anyway. But he's young. He's bigger than most around. So he normally gets his way, you see. Oh, yes, that's a formidable head shake. Truly blessed. Thank you, everybody. The elephant spirit is strong for me, I think. Lately, it's been coming up very strongly. Hello, young sir. He's going to try to get behind us to follow his friend. Friend of his just walked down the road behind us before. He's going to cross to the south. He's eaten all of the marulas he could get. Now it's time to go find another bush. Patsy, they can lie down like lions when they sleep, but they don't lie down for very long. Okay, we're going to leave him. They don't lie down for very long. They've got very, very heavy bodies. You find the youngsters lying down a little bit more than the adults, but the adults will lie down every day, but not for a very long time. And if they do lie down, you'll often find them leaning against a termite mound like this because of the weight distribution on their body. And they get, obviously it's very heavy. They're very heavy animals. When they lean against something, it's a little bit easier to get themselves back up again. Oopsie, let's go this way. It's lovely to find tracks on a termite mound of when elephants been sleeping. You can see the whole face, the ear and the eye, the trunk. But often they'll actually fall asleep standing. Just stand there and sort of close their eyes and flap their ears a bit, but completely switch off. We would fall over if we did that. It's actually quite a nice shot of the weaver nest with the silhouette, or the, shall I say, the reflection in the water. Very pretty. We come to the other side of it now. Scene of peace and industry and tranquility at the moment, but that can get shattered very quickly. Isn't that pretty? So I've no doubt that Gabar goshawk moves to and from weaver colonies. They feed on a wide variety of birds as well as ground nesting birds. Nicanova, it's hard to say. I didn't notice it. Obviously, it's impossible to count how many chicks are in the nests and how many have fallen out. But they all seem to be doing okay. Seem to be doing their thing. I'm just going to allow you a few moments of silence to take in these beautiful scenes. So, Miss Mason's class, you want to know what they eat? Insects, seeds, they'll even take nectar from flowers. Obviously, that's a seasonal shift. They stay around in the winter months when most food disappears, and then it's mainly a diet of seeds. Well, we're going to move on from our weavers shortly and see what we'll find next and send you over to andBeyond Phinda with their large cats.
Welcome back to andBeyond Phinda. We are still with these lions, and Mulalo, I hope that you are still with us as well. We've been watching this male. He's moved a little bit, but as he's been sleeping, we've definitely seen him twitch around and move. He did seem to wake up now, so I'm not sure if we see it again, but I do think he was dreaming for the past 5 minutes or so. So hopefully that will wrap up your question quite nicely. If you look quite closely at his eye, you can see, I mentioned earlier that it looks like it's been cut a little bit. And we were just discussing earlier, it looks like that he can't really close it very well. You'll see that it's a bit darker than the eye below, which has got quite a lot of white, lighter hair. And I think the reason for it being a bit darker is probably because it seems to constantly ooze, and that may be because it looks like part of his eyelid is missing, which would mean that his eye probably struggles to lubricate itself and to stay wet. And all that discharge that would come out of the eye that he would now have to produce to keep his eye wet is probably getting quite full of dust and muddy, and that's possibly why his eye on top is a little bit darker than the one below. So I think if it were to kind of dry up, that nice beautiful white hair would be able to be seen again. And how he got that cut on his eye, he was actually fighting with his brother, who is quite close by. We can't see him at the moment, but he was fighting with his brother for the right to mate. So perhaps like what he's doing now, with him being closer to the female, it's likely that he has actually won the right to mate with the female. They are rivals in some aspects, but they do spend a lot of their time together as well. And then when a female nearby would come into estrus, they would then compete with each other, which would often then do vicious. A scratch from his brother could then cut his eye and cause some scars on his face. I'm just going to have a quick look, but you'll probably be able to notice some more scars on his nose, between his eyes, and that's just from fights with his brother. And they're not necessarily as vicious with fights with the rival males. So male lions will hold a territory, and then what they'll do is they'll patrol that territory and compete with other males to keep it, and all the lionesses and the prides of lions within their territory will be considered as their prides. It's probably not a good way of putting it now in 2021. We have to be careful with what we say. But here in the animal kingdom, these male lions will be dominant over certain areas and certain prides of lions as well. Yes, Renata, they are. So the two males are dominant. So here in Phinda we split it into two sections, the south and the north, because it is quite a long, narrow reserve. And these two are dominant here in the south of the reserve. And there are another two prides of lions, which these prides consist of females, and they are dominant over both prides of the females, and they will mate with both sets of these or both of these prides. And then if any other lions do come in, so for instance the lions from the north of the reserve, if they encroach into their territory, they will then fight with them to try and chase them out, so they remain dominant and they are able to spread their genes. So it's basically how the evolutionary process has kind of come into play or been done over the last millions or the last few years, millions of years. And I'm not really sure which pride this female is from. Obviously we know the males, but the female I can't really say for now because she hasn't lifted up her head once. She's fast asleep. She does look relatively young, so if I were to chance a guess, I'd probably say she's part of the mountain pride. And the reason why I say she looks relatively young, just considering how her size, you can see she's quite a lot smaller than the male that she's lying next to. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's a few faint spots on her legs. So what we'll do now, we're going to try and go look for some elephants that we've seen quite close by earlier this afternoon. And we're going to send you over to Tswalu with Carl.
All right, onto small plants. Look how delicate and how very thinly built this beautiful plant is. This is a window seed, Orlenium fenestratum, a very dainty and very inconspicuous plant out here. In amongst the grass, you can see that in the background of the grass, it really doesn't look like much. And just how small and how tiny these flowers are, and including these little seeds over here, or the fruiting bodies, I mean, they are minute. I'm just going to turn this one over here so you can see where they get the name from, window seed. So let me just hold on to this here and then not make everybody seasick. And I'm just going to turn this one around so you've got some light on it. Just above my thumb, that is the seed itself. So this is obviously where it gets its name from, window seed. It's a membranous, transparent, pale to yellow disc. And then you can see these radiating veins, or, oops, I thought I broke it. Whole membrane is running through the actual seed. And the transparency of this seed is where it gets its name from, window seed. But this is an annual, slender annual erect herb, and they get up to about 60 odd centimeters in height. And just looking at the stuff, if Craig gives us a view just past this, you can see the grass in the background. It doesn't look like much, but it's really remarkable on how tiny and how fragilely this plant is built. You wouldn't think that something like this would survive out here, but it does. But these flowers for me is just absolutely mind-boggling. So I'm going to turn it over here, Craig, quickly, just so you can see in comparison to my actual thumb how tiny this flower is. Look at that. I mean, that is minute. And a very beautiful flower at that. 5 little petals, and then you got this almost like cup shape going down into the central part, where obviously the reproductive parts will be housed. Very distinctive as well if you take a look at the leaves. So looking at the small flowers along with the small seeds, we can also take a look at the shape. So if Craig, you give us a little bit of an outer appearance over there, it's very, very slender build. You can take a look there across my hand. And then if you take a look at the elongated, slender leaves, that is also a very distinctive characteristic as well. There's not a lot of things that is built as fragilely, by my knowledge, out here. Oh, and a question that was asked a couple of days ago. How many rare plants are on Tswalu? There is one species, and now I actually have forgotten the scientific name now. I've gotten back with the answer, but I'll get the scientific name to you folks. But there is one species of rare plant that is viewed on Tswalu. It has been recorded 3 times in South Africa, once in Namibia, so Southern Africa, sorry, and then twice on Tswalu. A very rare plant, and it is part of the lily family. Yes, it is part of the lily family that I can now remember. Scientifically, it is just eluded me, but I will get that to you guys. But really amazing, tiny, delicate flower and plant out here in and amongst all this grass. And there's a lot of different species of grass here. We've come onto almost like a little hillside here in the east, and what we're going to be doing is just taking this corner, and once we're on that corner, we're going to give you guys a very beautiful view looking down south and then looking along the very high sections of the Coronaberg mountain range. Donnie, what animals would feed on this? By my knowledge, Donnie, not much. you'd get small insects like ants and that going around the flowers for pollen and nectar, obviously to be pollinated. But by my knowledge, not much feeds on this. I haven't seen anything feed on this in my short little time here on Tswalu. But little plants like this, there's most probably not a lot of nutritional value in these small plants. So animals kind of just, make their way right past it. This seed is actually loose, so I'm actually going to take this one off here. This one is loose, yeah. Look at this. So now I'm going to hold it up into the sun, and now you can see, if Craig can get in there, you can actually see how that membrane is almost transparent. You can almost see right through it. Hence the name window seed. Quite remarkable. But in and amongst all of this greenery right now, it is just quickly overlooked. And I'm going to move it here, Craig. And if you look over here, even the grass is taller than this 60-odd centimeter tall annual plant. This grass is just dominating, and it's creating this very uniform green band going out into the field. But really remarkable to view these rarely seen, not rarely seen, but people wouldn't just stop for a plant like this to observe and look at it. And I think little things like this are really incredible. And how cool it is that we can share it with you guys, which is the best. That's the cherry on top of the cake for me. It's geeking out with other people. That's what makes safari so special, is if you have common interests or common loves, being on a safari vehicle and being out in the veld, you're really observing and understanding and growing in so many aspects. Really, really nice. Yeah, so look at this. Look how beautiful this is. Look at that. Oh my word. So those are the actual flowers of this flowering grass species right now. And if you look at flowers, this window seed is what we refer to as a complete flower. So you can see it's got petals, it's got all the bits and pieces that is needed to be categorized as a complete flower. Flowers on grass is what we refer to as an incomplete flower. You can see they're actually missing petals. These are the actual anthers right over here. And being pollinated by the wind solely, you don't need petals, because petals are fairly expensive items to make. So why make petals if you don't need to expend the energy? But then also to support the petals, you're going to need a larger support structure. So it's where you don't need petals in this over here. But really beautiful. Look at that color. This, I think, is form of a digitera, form of a finger grass. My grass knowledge is not the greatest, but really, really beautiful. But for now, we're going to observe and geek out here a little bit longer, but we're going to send you off to Steve.
Thank you, Carl. Well, it looks like we're not going to have a sunset this evening, everybody, because there's a whole lot of cloud building up in the west. But let's show you what this looks like at the moment. And we'll see how dark and stormy it is in the Highveld. Still quite pretty, though. So we'll do our little silent moment early this evening. So while we sit here and watch what looks like the beginning of the sunset, we will allow everybody just to take a real quiet, deep breath and just sit or stand or lie down, whatever it is you're doing, and just observe and absorb the silence. duck in bed, just beautiful. Well, everybody, we're going to move on, go follow up on some alarm calls we heard a moment ago, and he'll send you over to Tess in andBeyond and Ngala.
Welcome back to andBeyond and Ngala, everybody. So I'm actually driving next to the riverbed at the moment, and I am kind of checking along this very thick stretch in front of me. You can see how overgrown it is. You can barely see the road. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for that lioness that crossed the river, because we're not sure yet if she's gone back to the den site. We didn't see her there after she left. We haven't seen her come back, and so I'm actually checking all along on this road to see if she's maybe in one of these clearings looking for some food, or even in a new thicket along the river, maybe looking for a new den site. And it's quite a beautiful time of the day. It's really cooled down a lot. Even the birds are starting to get ready to roost for the night. So what we're doing is literally just driving really, really slowly because it is so overgrown, and hoping for maybe a sound of an alarm call, or even a flick of a tail, flicking ears, anything that might give us an idea that she's here. And this is actually one of my favorite roads on the entire property, and I can't believe how much it's grown since the start of the rain a week ago. It's been unbelievable. On some sections you can't even see the road. Luckily I know where it is. So you can see it's actually incredibly green in this particular area, and the soil tends to hold quite a lot of water here. But amazingly, the road has actually been very, very dry. And that makes me think that a lot of it has already either dried up or moved down towards the river, which is now just on my right-hand side. Thokozani, yes, I think animals definitely sense the change in weather. Oh, there's an elephant with a tiny baby. There's a tiny baby. Cute. So yes, Thokozani, the animals definitely can sense a change in the weather. And elephants, in fact, I was just about to say, are one of the most sensitive in terms of atmospheric pressure changes and things like that. And even things like leopards and lions have very sensitive whiskers to changes in atmospheric pressure. And I'm pretty sure they can hear and smell and feel changes coming long before we can. This is a beautiful female. She's got fairly decent tusks, actually. You can see, even though it's cool today, she's still flapping her ears, trying to keep it even cooler for her body. But she's got a tiny baby. You can't even see it in the grass behind her, but I'm hoping it's going to come into that gap. It's a very small calf. I would say about a week old, if that. She's actually a very beautiful female. And her one tusk, the one on my right, her left, is quite a lot more curved than the other. You can see it's actually pointing upwards compared to the other one. There's a tiny little baby behind her. Did you see that movement? And then that's the older teenager that's coming in. I say teenager, it's actually maybe around 6 years old, if that, 5 or 6. Can you hear them rumbling? It's such a beautiful sound. And they're actually all rumbling to each other. I can hear a few off to our left as well. And they must really be enjoying all of this greenery. There is so much food available for them at the moment. They've got fresh pickings of pretty much anything, even bark. Even though there's a lot of water around, you might still find that she might even eat off of the bark of trees during the day. She looks like quite an old female. She's got a sunken-in temple. You can see on the tops of her head, on either side. It's almost collapsing in. She looks fairly old. I'd say maybe 40, if not older. She's got a lot of grass in her mouth. Elephants definitely use their trunks for drinking. So what they actually do is they don't suck water into their trunk and then straight down. They actually suck water up in their trunk and then put their trunk into their mouth and squirt the water into their mouth. And so that's actually how they would end up drinking. And they have to drink a lot of water every single day. So it's really important that they learn how to use that trunk. And it can take almost 2 years before they've actually mastered it fully. What I'm going to do is move you a little bit forward into the gap. You can see she is moving through the bushes there. And so it's quite important, especially for the youngsters, when they're learning how to drink water. Transitioning from milk to water can be quite a thing, because they have to learn how to use that trunk properly. Imagine having over 100,000 muscles. Oh, there you can see the tiny baby. Look underneath mom's tummy. And there's a hyena calling in the background. That is definitely one of the smallest elephant calves I think I've ever seen. It's so small. Look at that size comparison to its mom. It doesn't even look like it takes her up to her knees. You can literally just see some movement in the grass. That is unbelievable. Now, what I particularly love about elephants when they're starting to move into thickets like this is actually the swishing of the tail. You can often see, but especially the white sheen that comes off of the tusks. It's one of the most special things, if you just notice that little glint as they're walking. But isn't it incredible to think that we know that there are 3 elephants right here, and yet to find them is quite difficult. But you can see how those tusks really do stick out in the thickets like this. She's pushing her way through that quarry. Renata, in heavy rainstorms, elephants would seek shelter in areas that have thickets, so anywhere that has a decent canopy with trees, so that they can hide from the rain. But what you would often find as well is in the beginning stages of a storm, elephants might actually be more active. Because they're so big, it's very difficult for them to cool their bodies down. And so you might actually find that they would enjoy the rain and actually be out in the rain. But when it is a very big storm, they'll stay together, they'll protect the babies, and they'll move to areas that have taller trees that they can find shelter from the rain. She's actually scratching herself on that tree. You can see the branch coming out over her back. So what's actually really cool about this view, if you have a look on her back, you can actually clearly see the ridge of her spine. And that structure is very, very important in African elephants in particular, because they have such heavy heads and tusks and trunks compared to the other elephants like Asian elephants. They have to have an immensely strong back. And so they've got a lot longer vertebra on that back to allow for muscle attachment. I'm going to move you a little bit forwards again so you can see her through the bushes here. And you can actually see that she's got very high shoulders as well, so they stick up above her head. And this is all to do with the fact that African elephants have enormous, enormous heads. They're a lot larger. Look at that tiny baby. It's actually still looking quite, I want to say fuzzy, fluffy in a sense. So little elephants are born with quite a few hairs on them. And you can see the head almost looks a bit fluffy. The little one definitely looks like it's still learning how to move around the mum. But very, very strong instincts. You can see that it's standing right underneath mum's tummy. You can see she's got very full mammary glands, and that little one is staying very, very close. Straight underneath mum's tummy. That really is a tiny little calf. Dark female elephants will remain in a reproductive age pretty much until they die. So anywhere from around 8 to 9 years old, females will start breeding or mating, and around every 3 years or so they'll go into estrus and have another calf. And then usually when elephants die at around 60 years old in the wild, they're actually not dying because their bodies are too old. They're dying because their teeth have worn out, which means they can't eat as much. And so anywhere from about 50 to 55 years and onwards would mean that the elephants would then start slowing down with their breeding. But they might breed right up until the age that they die, because they are incredibly, incredibly reproductive animals. They don't have as strict of a limit, if I can put it that way, as other animals might, because their bodies themselves are not getting that much older. It's just the teeth that are the main problem when they get to that older age. She's got a fly bothering her. Did you hear her kick herself there? Oh, look at that little baby. It's trying to use its trunk. Oh, sweet. I think we're going to leave them to move off into those thickets. We're not going to follow them any further. That is still an incredibly young elephant calf, so I think it's very, very special that we actually got to see it like that, and nice and relaxed in around the mom. And trying to use its trunk there at the last little bit. That was adorable. So imagine trying to pick up something as small as a peanut with a trunk that has over 100,000 muscles. It takes almost 6 months just to learn the basics. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep looking for that Birmingham lioness. I don't think she's here where those elephants have been. And I'll send you over to Tswalu in the meanwhile.
Wow, a brand new little baby. It is always a very nice thing to see. New life, but especially a new elephant. We're just on top of this little raised section, and we are just appreciating the wonderful landscape that we have available this side. A lot of grass birds around us, busy calling out monotonous lark. In the distance we can hear all those wattle starlings, Kalahari scrub robins. You can hear the soft hooting noise from that Caricane button quail. And I think the scenery speaks for itself. Our movements, we are slowly heading towards a pan, and we're going to go see if there's any visitors in and around that watering hole. very, very beautiful. And we thought that it would be great to show you guys that. But let's carry on. And for the meantime being, what we're going to do is head east, but we are going to send you off to Phinda.
Welcome back, everyone. We have found a pair of marabou storks. We can only see one in shot at the moment. And it's quite interesting. We were just discussing now. I've seen these storks a couple of times over the past 3 days. And the last time I saw them, they actually flew up and landed on the exact same trees that they are both sitting on now. So the one that we can see for the moment, if we can get quite close in, you'll notice that on the branch that it's standing on, you'll notice it's very, very white. So it looks like an old dead fever tree. It's a fever tree in front of it, the live one, obviously. And it looks like it's been there defecating for... It's done that quite a few times over the past month or so. And it's interesting because I've just had a look in my field guide now. It doesn't mention anything about marabou storks migrating. But it was in 2019 where I saw one of these storks perching on the exact same tree. Well, I say one of these storks, but I can't really conclude that it is the same bird. But after having seen that this one has returned to the same perch so many times over the last few days, I think it is possible that it could actually be the same storks that come back year after year. They aren't here throughout the year, but I think they do probably hang around close in this Zululand area. There are quite a lot of reserves all around us, and marabou storks are quite special birds. If they aren't that beautiful, they really are special. They play an important part in any ecosystem, and they are threatened. They are listed as threatened on the IUCN, so they are birds that are obviously struggling with the loss of habitat. They're restricted to savanna areas, such as what you can see here, this kind of grassland with scattered trees in between. And they do frequent, obviously, wetlands and the fringes of dams. They feed on a large variety of things. And what they would do is, usually you'll see them hanging around watering holes, and when we do get another closer look at them, you'll notice that down their legs, it's all white. That's just from, as they defecate on themselves, that kind of, it builds up. It's actually a type of acid that builds up, and that white color actually helps them stay cool and protects them from the sun and the elements. So if you notice, the bottom of its feet are quite dark, and I mentioned that branch earlier. That's quite white, just like their feet are. So if you look at like a car battery, often when it's broken and it's leaking, you'll see there's little white marks right by the terminals. And it's a similar thing. It's just the acid that's kind of drying out. As it dries out, it turns to a whiter color. So it's a beautiful silhouette at the moment. And what marabou storks they'll even seen scavenging. So if there's a carcass around here, you might see them make their way to the carcass, and they'll compete with animals like vultures to actually try and feed on it. You'll notice their bare head and neck, so if it were to lift up its neck a little bit taller, I think as it's perched up there, it's probably pulling its neck quite close to its body. It'll probably help it balance. And you can see it's very strong bill, so that bill helps it. I mentioned it's got a very wide-ranging diet, so a big strong bill like that can help it eat a whole wide variety of things. But for now, I think they are usually active during the day, so it's probably going to sit here for the rest of the night. Stacy, I would probably say about 1 meter tall, but I'll look in my field guide now and give you an exact answer. It'll only take me a few seconds. So Stacy asked me, how tall are these birds? And I was not that close. They are 1.5 meters tall, so 50% off. They are one of the biggest storks that we get here in South Africa. I suppose all storks are quite large, but these are one of the larger ones. They'll take anything from, I've seen them eating catfish before. So small barbel, here in the dry season, these water holes that we get here on Phinda, most of them are annual. So they'll be full of water during the rainy season. So at the moment, I'm sure most of you know that Cyclone Eloise passed through here very recently. So a lot of the water holes now are very, very full, which is awesome. We are so happy that they are. And as they dry out throughout the winter months, which will be later on this year, so perhaps later on in the year, August, September, just before spring starts, will be our driest. And that's when the water holes are very empty, and it's like a bonanza for the marabou storks. So it's very shallow, and there'll be a lot of catfish that are kind of stuck in a very, very small pond as the water levels get lower. And then it's easy pickings for them. So they'll just wade around in the shallow water and try and pick up on any movement. And other birds that they would normally compete with would probably be chased away by them. They're often found in groups. It's very interesting. I mentioned there was 2 around here. We can't see the other one at the moment, but we did see it a little bit earlier. And it's quite interesting that we've seen 2 together, because you do often see them in larger groups than just 2. And I was mentioning I mentioned earlier how they have their bare necks. That's because of when they do scavenge, it's better to not have any feathers that will get very dirty. So, Timothy, you asked if marabou storks are dangerous. I don't think so. Not to humans, at least. Maybe if you are a bullfrog, probably dangerous. But for you, Timothy, I don't think so. And now, I was mentioning earlier that acid that builds up on their legs as they defecate. You'll see that on their feet, it's actually dark or black. It looks black from here, at least in this low light. And that's because the acid that would be all the way down their legs would get washed up when they wade around in shallow water, which is actually how they spend a lot of their day, looking for food and foraging. You can see that beautiful fever tree that it's sitting in front or just behind, and it looks like probably the same type of tree that's died that it's perching on now. Just judging by the shape of all the branches, you see the one in the front, the branches, the tree's almost the same height, what you could expect from 2 trees growing in almost the same place, so their roots would be in a very similar environment, and obviously they'd get the same amount of exposure to the sun. And if you look down in this area, marabou storks like wading in shallow water, and this is a little shallow drainage system, and where we'd expect to see fever trees. We are going to carry on moving. We are hoping to find some buffalo, but for now we'll send you off to another live location.
Look at this, the little one is up and about. Certainly hasn't had enough milk at this age. No amount of milk is enough. Oh, Corky. Too sweet. Oh, look at this. That is stunning.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
I'm Nikki here at andBeyond in Ngala in South Africa. I love getting questions from viewers about all the small things within the environment and how it all is integrated with one another. If you want to ask me any questions, please simply register with the WildEarth website, head across to the Live Safari page, and then post your questions there. I'm looking forward to chatting to you on my next WildEarth drive.
For the month of January 2021, we are offering a chance to win a unique WildEarth expedition to the magnificent Tswalu Kalahari. From the ancient Kortai's Koranenberg Mountains to to the southern Kalahari's red sand dunes, Tswalu offers what travelers crave most: space and time. The winner will explore this landscape in a vehicle, on foot, or on horseback, with a chance to go behind the scenes with WildEarth and of course meet the meerkats. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend at the luxury Motse Lodge, including flights from either Johannesburg or Cape Town. Open to all WildEarth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply. In a world full of upheaval, we all need a quiet and safe space to breathe. A place where anxiety and stress don't exist. A place where life carries on as normal. Escape to nature with WildEarth.
Good afternoon, everybody. We've decided to sneak up onto Buffelshoek, to an area Tristan was working very hard yesterday morning, I think the day before, for, I think yesterday morning when he had elephants causing all sorts of chaos. And he couldn't find 2, maybe 3 leopards that were moving around. So we just thought, you know, let's see if we'll be lucky. We'll come back on here, have a little scratch around, see what might materialize. Nice, slow little cruise through the bush. It is really transformative, everybody. If any of you recall a few months ago, what did the vegetation look like versus now? It is a transformation overload. Goes to show how incredibly resilient these savannas are. They go from enormous amounts of, well, huge, the sort of open patches, dry, desolate in a way, and suddenly, after just a little bit of rain, they just kick back into gear. Resilience, the ability to bounce back from one state to another. Forests are not regarded as being resilient. They're regarded as being stable, which means that if you influence a forest, same as a coral reef, it takes a very long time for them to get back to that state. Whereas an environment that's regarded as being resilient means it can take a lot of pressure, can take a lot of influence. So fire, drought, herbivory, elephants, all part and parcel of what actually created this environment. Forests, though, take a very long time to get to that stable state, and they stay there, but change it, and you see it very quickly become something completely different. To get back to what it was before, near impossible. Near impossible. I hope that makes sense. I mean, the transformation is incredible. It does make it hard to find things, but that is part of the game. They don't call them game animals for nothing. It's all a part of the game, trying to find them. I like this time of year for the flowers. And one thing very surprised about, just now we were discussing yesterday, is yes, there are wildflowers, but nowhere near in the same abundance as there was last year. Last year, the wildflowers were everywhere. There's still species of wildflower I haven't seen. Still species I haven't come across. There really is. There's been a few morning glories, not many. A few justicias, a couple of beans, but... And Tristan's suggestion was that the grass has just overwhelmed it, and that makes a lot of sense. there's been so much rain that the grass has really built this really dense sort of herbaceous layer that the flowers have to compete with. And if they're not getting enough photosynthesis or enough sort of space, grass can actually be very, very competitive and can outcompete trees in certain environments. Jerome, it really depends on what animal. Some animals feed on flowers. Many animals will feed on flowers just as a byproduct of eating the rest of the plant. We're seeing the elephants at the moment feeding on the grass seeds themselves, which is essentially the flowers and the fruit. Elephants also feeding on the fruits of the marulas currently. A lot of animals, including myself, are feeding on the fruits of many of the trees we have around. But grazing animals, for the most part, are feeding on the leaves of the grasses. And browsing animals or mixed feeders would be feeding on the leaves of grasses, the leaves of the trees and the forbs, and wildflowers as well. Most certainly. But I wouldn't say that it's the animals that have influenced the number of flowers that are around, because there's the same amount of animals this year as there are last, to a degree. Obviously, the numbers are slightly different, but I wouldn't say that the herbivory is the flowers. The grass is dense. I mean, you see how we're losing animals in this grass. We didn't lose them like this last year. Okay, we're going to carry on along here to a cat maybe moving in the open of the road, because as you know, the grass is very long. But send you back over to Tess, andBeyond and Ngala, see if she's had any luck with her cats.
So we are just noticing the incredible difference in clouds here at andBeyond and Ngala. On one side, it looks like a painting, and then in front of us, it is completely terrifying. There's this massive bank of dark grey clouds moving in from the distance. And it seems like there might be a storm coming later. And then on the northern side, all of a sudden, it's these wispy, high clouds again. But it's absolutely crazy how different these clouds are. It actually almost doesn't look like it's in one scene. It's like everywhere we're looking, there's a different type of cloud all over, and it's actually a little bit scary. I mean, if I look at those clouds up there, they look pretty ominous, like there might be some rain coming. But it's only coming from one direction, that our weather normally comes from the south to the southwest. So maybe there is a storm coming. To see if we do get some more rain after this cyclone has brought us so much already. I think all of the greenery and the animals, they're absolutely rejoicing in the water that we've had so far. It's actually really beautiful. You can see all the tall trees starting around me now. And this is definitely leopard territory. I think Tristan would enjoy it here for sure. Have a look at that sky with that beautiful dead tree. Stunning, hey? This really, really is one of the most beautiful stretches of andBeyond and Ngala. And with a dramatic sky in the background, it just makes it even more beautiful in a sense. Now, if only you could imagine a leopard in a tree with that as the backdrop. That would definitely make my day. Oh, I can see an elephant trying to sniff us. So we're going to try and get it for you. It's definitely smelling something. I don't know if it's us, but this elephant has its trunk straight up in the air, and it keeps doing it over and over again. Oh, and now it's starting to move. See there, it's smelling. It's definitely smelling something. It could be us that it's very close to that area where the Birmingham lioness, where that lioness crossed over. But it is getting quite dark now. We're going to switch over to infrared, which allows us to see a lot better at night without any visible light on the side. Just have a listen to those noises though. Those two elephants are interacting. There's more elephants in the background. There's a lot of birds calling. Something's definitely agitating this elephant. I wonder if it can smell that lioness. How exciting would that be? That noise is incredible. So there you can see, there's actually quite a few elephants here. There seems to be a herd with a few babies. I don't think it's the same herd as the herd we had just now. We've moved off from that area. But that sound of those ears flapping is unbelievable. There's a lot of noise going on at the moment. I can hear the frogs are waking up. The birds are doing their last chorus before roosting for the night. You can see a tiny little elephant sticking out on the right there, just behind the tree. So it's incredible to think that there are so many elephants here and all we can hear is the occasional flap of ears or the breaking of a twig. And it really is such a beautiful time of day because now they can start moving around without having to worry about that heat. So this is actually very energy efficient for elephants. I wondered what it was that was actually making that one smell and get a bit agitated. Jerry, yes, I would think baby elephants use a lot of their energy trying to keep up with the herd because the herd can move quite quickly. You can imagine they've got much smaller legs, so they have to move a lot faster to move and keep up with their mums. But elephants are also very sensitive, so you might find the herd might slow down for them. But there always seems to be enough energy in all baby animals for some playing. And they do get tired incredibly quickly, so any young animals will spend a bit of energy playing, a bit of energy keeping up and practicing and using their trunks and those kinds of things. And then they need to have a nap every now and then just to try and regain that energy. So I'm definitely going to be spending a little bit more time here, especially because it seems like some of the elephants are getting a bit agitated again. I've got one in front of me on the front right that's starting to lift its trunk again. So I'm going to stay here for a while and I'm going to send you over to some zebras at Tswalu.
Lovely. The southern zebra, or the plain zebra as we know it in South Africa, previously known as the Burchell's zebra, having that shadow stripe presented in between the black stripes. Very, very easy to distinguish. Because if you look at East Africa, you get the Grant's zebra that lacks that shadow stripe. So it can be a little confusing when you get up that side, but Yeah, in South Africa, it's fairly simple. How beautiful are those markings. So while we have the zebra in frame, they can go slightly down, Craig. So if you take a look at that zebra, what a beautiful shot we have of that almost triangular pattern on its shoulder. That is a very important pattern when it comes to a foal recognizing its mother. So the mother will actually shield the young foal with her side bits, especially that shoulder part. And that's where the imprint would be adopted by the young foal. And that's a very distinctive line or a section of patterning with zebra. It's actually how the foal will recognize its mother via that triangular frame on the shoulder. And obviously each zebra has its own unique ID print. And they're going to come out there now. Oh, looks like they're slowly moving away from us, actually. There they go. Beautiful animal. So one of two species that we have here, the plains zebra and then as well as the Hartman's mountain zebra, which at this time of the day is normally when we catch them on the foothills of the mountains. Oh. And now they're all going to start running. Lovely. Oops. Okay. So you can see herd dynamics. When one gets a fright and it starts running, it kind of spooks everybody as well. Being in a herd, obviously safety in numbers, but then you can also be freaked out a bit when somebody else gets spooked by something. Crimson-breasted shrike here on the left here, Craig. See on that shrubby bush over there? Directly at our 3 o'clock? 9 o'clock. Go in for us. Ah, he's moved. Oh, there he is. Wonderful. Yo, Craig's on the birds there. You can see that uniform dark section, or dorsal section, and its characteristic hook-like beak, and there's that beautiful crimson color. Like all the shrikes have, is that hook at the end of their beak. It's a very important tool that they would use to take out prey. Loves to be in the thick of things. What a lovely treat it was to see a zebra or two there. You don't get to see them frequently, but we're going to start up. We've just left this pan over here. Myself and Craig have taken a look around the pan, and there's absolutely no tracks in or out there. The pan is filled to the brim, and what we're doing is we're heading just to the base of that mountain there, just on our left-hand side. At that base, we're going to go to another pan, and we're going to go take a look at it. And hopefully we have some tracks or somebody hanging in and around that beautiful area. And I'm just also very curious to see how full it is, because I have not been to the site yet since we've had those beautiful rains on the 26th, through the evening of the 26th, sorry. Lovely light. Beautiful camel thorn here on our right, just looking very good. Nobody sitting in it. No owl. You need to be very careful that nobody's sitting right in front of a branch. Your white-faced owl can be very sneaky, and you need to be very careful when driving past, saying, oh yeah, it's just a tree. It could be an owl sitting in the tree. Looking very beautiful to our left-hand side now with the setting sun. Look at that. Whoa. Let me give us a 2-minute pause here to appreciate that. Golden-tailed woodpecker in the distance. Drawn out. Wee. I wonder what people think of me when I try and imitate birds. As long as somebody has a laugh, that's the most important thing. So Craig in frame there's got us in this almost the central part of that picture. That is one of the highest peaks here on Tswalu. On average, we sit around about 1,200 meters above sea level. And I think the highest peak goes up to about 1.15 odd, which is quite high. All right. But we are going to continue south of here, but let's send you over to Tristan and see what he has for you.
Well, talking about heading south, we're also heading south, and I'm glad Carl's having a laugh at himself because, well, you can't take yourself too seriously on this show. Half the stuff we end up doing is ridiculous, and so one just needs to start laughing it off after a while. Unfortunately, I mean, we've just been absolutely kind of hammered by our leopards today. They just do not want to come out. I've driven that same circle, I honestly think, about 15 times today, and haven't found any sign of him coming out. We checked everywhere. He hasn't. I think he's still in that block, but the grass, I mean, it's really near impossible if he's not walking on the roads. So I've abandoned that search, and we've come south onto Chitwa. There was very iffy reports that Kuchava and the cub were around, but no one seems to have a sighting running, or I don't know if it was maybe one of the staff at Chitwa that saw it. They said somewhere near the airstrip. So I'm just driving the route that I know they like to walk around in case. The chances are probably quite slim that we're going to bump into them right here, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. So we'll just quickly check here, and then I'll go up onto the driveway. She prefers, if it is Kuchava, she prefers the driveway itself. It also could be Sibui's two youngsters. It could be, I mean, I would be very surprised if it's Tunny and the cub, because we didn't find a single track leaving that area for either of them. But you never know. Maybe it's possible. I want to check carefully as I go through this. Somebody's already driven here, so they would have washed a lot of the tracks that are around, but there's hyenas. No leopard that I can see came through here. What you got to look for is vehicle tracks. It's probably going to be the easiest, because with leopards, when somebody follows them, they turn, and so you get all these kind of turning tracks on the roads where they've been. So it should be fairly simple to find, if there was a sighting, to find where it was. The problem is it's also getting quite dark now, so tracking is not really going to be a possibility for the next, after about 10 minutes. We're going to have very low light, and so you're not going to see tracks. All right, come on. Let's do the driveway, and then from there I think we'll just check the road that runs parallel to the airstrip. Sometimes she likes to head there. There's also a little quarry here behind the hangar that she sometimes likes to leave the cub. That could be a good place just to have a little look. There's no tracks here. No, Leslie, every morning we're going out, we're finding multiple leopard tracks around. So they're here and they're moving around. It's just, we just haven't caught them in that split second that they're on the road. If you look at our sightings of leopards, yes, we do have them on the roads, but it's not all the time. A lot of the sightings we have are off the road. And so in this time, unless you... Okay. Now what? Now you've thrown a tantrum and everything is fine. The hazards of this time of night is elephants blend in so well. We might have to go into our infrared. It's starting to get quite dark at the moment, so we'll go into infrared now. The leopard's behavior doesn't change that much. They should be on roads a lot, and like I say, we are seeing the tracks. The problem lies in that, so like this morning, for example, we drove there, we heard an impala alarm call, we saw the impala, we stopped with the impala. In the time that we were stopped with the impala, that leopard walked out onto the road again. So what's happened is he's gone off the road 2-3 meters and lay down. Now in winter and in drier times, or before the cyclone, what you would have found is maybe the grass wasn't quite as long, quite as dense, and it would have been easy to then spot that leopard right next to the road, and you see it and you have a sighting. Whereas now he's kind of come off. And then again, when we found him on foot, if it had been in winter, we would have seen that leopard with the vehicle from far away. We wouldn't have even had to worry about being on foot. And once he's kind of moved and laid down again in that grass, I went up on the top of a termite mound in that area this afternoon just to see if I could see around. And you can't see anything. There's stumps that I know are there from following Tundi during the winter months, and you can't even make out the stumps, or even let alone, actually the best example is a fallen over marula. Yes, okay, you can carry on with your temper tantrum, but no one's watching. Why? For what reason? There's a huge, massive marula that's fallen over, and you can't even see that marula in the grass. The trunk of that tree is completely hidden by the length of grass at the moment. And that gives you an idea of just how tricky it is to find a leopard. It just sits down, and it doesn't even have to be far. It can be 2-3 meters off the road, and you're not going to find it. And that's why we're struggling a little bit. That coupled with how much water we've had, when it rains like this, there's puddles everywhere. So these leopards don't have to come out onto the road to walk, to go to a dam, to go and drink. They can just drink right next to the road in the seeps at the moment, with nice flowing water that's coming out of the seep. And so there's no movement from them, or not a lot of movement from them. All right, I'm pretty sure we're going to get trumpeted now that Eddie moved off, but no, he's run off, which is good. Naughty little elephant. So, they're finding all they need. Yes. Stop shouting at me. I'm going away from you. They just, that much harder to see because of the length of the grass. When the grass dies back again, it'll be fine, and when it dries out a little bit, it'll be fine. If you look at just prior to the cyclone, we were finding leopards daily, every drive, and that was because they were in areas that we could access, we could off-road, we could spend time with them. It just means that the prime areas that leopards inhabit, like drainage lines, are completely off limits at the moment. So we can't even check the areas that are prime spaces for them at the best of times, and that then limits us quite a lot into what we can and can't do. And that's why we haven't seen many of them. Also, it's a matter of vehicles. That's another thing. At the moment, it's really just Steve and myself and 2 landowners that are around. So that's 4 vehicles across Chitwa, Simambili. I think they're not driving at all. So it's Chitwa, Simambili, Buffelshoek, Torchwood, and Djuma. 4 cars spread across that. You can't be everywhere at once, and that means that sometimes we're going to miss a cat walking over the road, or we're going to not hear an alarm call in a place where there was a cat moving. These are the kind of things that are the problem. We're also not tracking these cats nearly as much as we normally would, because what's the point of walking, disturbing the cat, for us not to be able to even get to it? So, you drive on the roads and you hope that they're on the roads, because that ultimately will allow us to actually view them. Outside of that, we're not going to get really much viewing of them, and so it seems silly, and sometimes I feel like we just need to give them a little bit of a break. They get viewed heavily during most times of the year, and so when you get rain like this, it's good just to give them a bit of a break for a while. And so while it's frustrating when you're finding them or finding signs of them and know that they're there and you can't access it, at the end of the day, it really isn't the biggest kind of deal. The sun will come up tomorrow, there will be another leopard track, and we will have another leopard sighting. It's not like leopard sightings are going to just stop now. It's just going to be a little bit harder, that's all. And we'll eventually get it right, and once we break that little kind of, not bad run, but once we break that cycle of kind of slow drives and you start to understand the movements. I mean, you can already see with Thandi and the cub. Yesterday afternoon we found the tracks for the first time. This morning we had them on foot. This afternoon we know they haven't left there. So we're building now a pattern again, and we're going to start nailing down the patterns of where Sabui's cubs are again, where Kuchama and the cub is, where Tingana is, and then slowly, you know, once you start building that up, you know where you're searching for these animals, and then you start to find them more regularly. At the moment, we're just trying to figure out where they are. You know, they're moving around, and lots of roads are also quite hard and compacted, and that makes life very tricky. I think actually I'm going to just continue on this road because they might pop out somewhere here. And that makes, you know, somewhere that they can cross the road and go, and we don't pick up the track. Tracking's a lot harder, and once you kind of have an idea of the area that they're moving, then life becomes that much easier in terms of finding them. If you look at Tanya and the cub before the cyclone, we knew Mulawanini, just drive there up and down, eventually you'll get a track. That track will eventually lead you to a sighting. Sabui's cubs, boundary of Chitwa and Nets, drive up and down there, you'll find them somewhere. You know, so that's how the pattern develops, and especially with young animals, once they're left somewhere, unless mom takes them to a kill, they're there somewhere. You just got to put in the effort and the time, and so far we are putting in the effort and we'll eventually be rewarded. We just have to be patient. All right, so I'm going to keep going just down this road. They like to walk this road, so maybe we'll see them kind of moving along, and while we do that, let's send you across to Tswalu.
Well, patience is key, and you will be rewarded, Tristan. You can just sing them a sweet song there to draw them out. But yeah, like Tristan says, patience is key when it comes to tracking animals, and when it doesn't seem like it's working out time and time again, you mustn't let frustration seep in, because it is what it is. And I applaud people with patience, because I have very little of it through the best of times. Looking over the plains, looking directly due west now, you can see the setting sun just starting to touch those western set mountains. It is literally just quarter way through. It's set across that western section. But what a beautiful vista. I can't believe I'm so lucky that I get to work and live in a place that is as beautiful as Tswalu. And when I started my guiding career, I always dreamt about walking through very diverse grassy plains. It is great. Hopefully that is the Jerome that asked the question about the dispersal age of ostrich. They would join a creche in their younger months and then stay within a creche up to about 9 months, and then from there they would disperse. So hopefully that is the same Jerome. Getting back to that ostrich question that we had a day ago, yesterday I think it was. But yeah, when this light illuminates this grassy section of Tswalu, it is just magical. Black-chested Prinnie busy calling here. Had zitting noise. Black-chested Prinnie busy calling out. Might be a nest close by. Just look at this side over here, Craig, with this beautiful, just take a look at this over here, folks, with this beautiful cloud formation over here. I mean, it's great over there, but it is just as good this side. And it's normally like that. Ooh. brown-crowned chagra. It's normally like that, where you're sitting at a point and you actually don't know where to look. And you find yourself doing a 360, continuously trying to absorb it all. Pale chanting goshawk. It's a very beautiful area to be in. And like I think it was Sue that said yesterday that we are very lucky. And yet again I found myself pinching myself almost to wake up from this beautiful dream. Yes, great, it was the same Jerome. Fantastic. And there is still 2 questions I need to get back to viewers, so I haven't forgotten. And just think about the people, early inhabitants of Southern Africa, moving through these vast open plains. Totally exposed. And all the skills necessary to live out in this wilderness. I take my hat off to Steve showing you guys the other day the medicinal uses of plants. That's where I really go back in thought to people, starting that out, starting the process of, the do's and don'ts of certain plant species. A lot of trial and error people must have gone through to finally figure out, what is useful and what is not. Well, I'll talk about him and we're going to send you over to him. We're going to send you over to Steve.
Thank you, Kyle. Lovely sunset your side. Ours has gone a long time ago. Well, after you left us, everyone, we found tracks of a young male leopard, which we were tracking for quite some time, all the way to the western parts of Buffelshoek. But we eventually even found some steaming, fresh, sticky poo. I didn't touch it, so I don't know how sticky it was, but it was very fresh. And we carried on for a little bit, and then we weren't able to locate. It was just getting a little bit dark, and we found ourselves in a spot where we couldn't actually broadcast anyway. And on our way back, we saw a hyena try to catch a scrub hare. I've never seen that before. We don't know what happened. The scrub hare ran off the road, and the hyena ran after it. And as is with the vegetation at the moment, we don't know. The scrub hare probably got away because of the vegetation so thick. How would the hyena have found it? But then, quite an incredible thing to see. Obviously, hyenas are very opportunistic, and we don't see them hunting very much here. But I reckon they hunt a lot more than we give them credit for. In the Mara, we definitely see them hunting a lot, buffalo and all sorts. Just got to announce that I'm off. Stations, I'm off Buffelshoek. Keep the protocol. Yeah. If you didn't notice, I just crossed back into Djuma. It all looks the same at night. Did you know we'd crossed Theo? Yep. Theo knew. Does take a bit of time to get used to the roads, everybody, when you work in an environment like this. And then you go out at night, and then it all looks the same. Definitely takes a little bit of practice. We were talking about the other night on the dam camp, Tristan and myself, about being temporarily disorientated. Never lost, just temporarily disorientated. It's important to know your navigation. I mean, the sun's just set there on our right-hand side, so quite easy to tell north, east, and south at the moment. But once the sun's gone, the moon isn't going to be up for another 50-odd minutes or so, maybe less than an hour. And There are a few stars we could navigate by. I remember when I was training guides, teaching some of the guides astronomy, and some of them would say, but why do we need to know the stars? I said, yeah, well, that first time you get lost in the block, you're trying to get out and you're trying to get home, and you want to focus on one direction, then you're going to be very happy we taught you a couple of constellations. I certainly was the first time I got lost. Temporarily disorientated, excuse me. Spotlight Steve. Haven't heard that in a while. Haven't heard that in a while, everybody. I've been back for almost 2 weeks, just by the way. And I'll be here for another 2 weeks. And I think it's still going to be wet, the ground, for the next 2 weeks, so the vegetation's only going to get thicker. We need a buffalo mowing a garden service to come through, the elephant garden service to come through, to start clearing up the vegetation, and you'll see how they do it. Remember last year how the buffalo herd materialized in, and they do these sort of like figure-of-8 movements to and from the watering holes. And where they've been, they trample, they feed, they squash, and they just really clear up the vegetation. It's quite something to see. So this year I think it's going to be quite similar, and I think they're going to be very busy in these areas. They don't get paid per hour, the Buffalo Garden Service. They just do it for the fun and for the feed. I know for a fact when I finally have some property, I am not going to have lawn. All of my area of ground will be pathways or maybe some stone or growing for food. I don't see the necessary, or maybe if I've got some animals, there'll be some grazing. But I don't personally see the point in having a lawn that just gets mowed constantly. Constantly, all year round. We water it to keep it green and we mow it. I don't personally see the point. I'm not insulting anyone who's got one, but if I do, and I'm looking to get some property soon, I'm going to plant food in all those areas. Yes, frogs, you agree with me, don't you? Yes, they do. Food gardens, food forests. And maybe some grazing if I have a couple animals. That'll probably happen. Okay, well, we're going to slowly make our way home and see what the spotlight might provide for us.
Welcome back to andBeyond in Ngala, everybody. So I am sitting outside one of the little pan systems and admiring the sounds of all the frogs. So the grass is so long you actually can't even see the pan system. Listen to all the noise. I don't know if you can count how many different species of frog we can hear. It's absolutely beautiful. So this is almost like a chorus. All of the frogs advertising to each other where they are, maybe looking for mates, advertising a territory that's been taken. You can actually see some of the insects that are flying around as well. There's a lot of termites, alates that have come out. A lot of other insects as well. Isn't it beautiful? So this is probably one of my favorite things to do is once it's dark, sitting in the darkness and just listening to all of the sounds of it. It really makes you appreciate a lot of the smaller things in life.
Well, still quiet on our front. We have some good intel though for the morning, which is nice. I think probably I'll offer it to Steve more than anything else because I know that he hasn't seen Nzutini yet. Sounds like she was on Simambili this afternoon, and I'm not sure if they said she had a kill or not, but she was apparently very static on an area where we can drive, so that's good news for the morning. Like I said, I couldn't copy now see if they had a kill or not, but she apparently was there this morning and this afternoon, so I'm sure she'll be there tomorrow morning too. Something must be anchoring her to that spot, but we only got an update about it this evening, and then there was an update about the leopards on Chitwa, so we'll try and follow up on them too. But otherwise we got an absolute hiding today, Steve and I, which is good for us. Sometimes you've got to have it. It makes you appreciate the good days that much more when you have a quiet day. I always think that it's a good thing that we have these days where, you know, you work hard and you find something, but you don't necessarily get decent sighting out of it. It makes you want to do it more. It makes you want to try harder, which is a good thing. Like I say, it's not about being despondent. It's just about wanting the best that we can, and for all of you guys at home. And that's why we both try and put as much effort as we can into tracking animals. The easy and safe options are often just to go to a waterhole or just go to in a den. Sometimes you've got to put in a lot of effort to get the reward out here. And eventually when this little kind of luck shifts and breaks our way, it should break with a really nice sighting. I often find when you have these kind of days where you have a little bit of glimpses or you kind of track and things don't quite go your way, when the luck does turn, it normally turns really nicely and you get a really quality sighting out of your patience. And so that's what we have to display, Steve and I, and we'll eventually get it right. I'm pretty sure Steve will get lucky tomorrow morning if he heads towards Mambili. Nzutini seems to just live on that open clearing these days. Doesn't seem like she heads very far at all. 3 times that I've been to that clearing, we've seen her in the last 10 days. So hopefully Steve will be able to get her. Like I say, I thought that area would have been still closed, but obviously it's dried out enough, and there is a few crests there. So it is drivable, I would imagine. Hi, Impalas, how are you guys doing? Just turn off our lights so we don't spook them. You can see it's quite dark out now. And they're in a bad place for impalas. They shouldn't be here. It's very thick in this area and not a great place for them. All right, well, it is that time, though, where we need to say goodbye. I hope that all of you enjoyed the afternoon. It seems as though there was a lot of things for everybody, really, from small to big. And so we hope that you all had fun. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. So from all of us, thank you very much. Have a good evening or day wherever you may be, and see you tomorrow on our sunrise safari.